Hey guys, Ben here with the I Don't Drink Coffee podcast. Before we get started, Lucas and I want to attach a disclaimer. Our guest, Scott Morgan, joined us via computer all the way from Germany. We tried a new app that we've never used before and forgot to tweak a few settings. One little setting, actually. So the audio from Lucas and I is not that great. Scott's audio sounds great, so that's really what matters in this awesome episode. We contemplated contacting Scott to completely redo the podcast, but decided against it. This episode was far too good to just throw away and start over. And you'll see why. So kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. One more thing. This episode is brought to you by Blackline Insurance Group. Have yourself a great day.
And we're back.
Thanks for joining us. Again, I Don't Drink Coffee podcast, Ben Klein, Lucas Johnson. We have a special guest, very special guest, all the way from Germany. We're at in Germany.
I'm in Kaiserslautern, so I'm on the west, kind of in the western corner. If you look where Luxembourg, Germany, and France come real close together, I'm right there.
Scott Morgan, Sergeant First Class in the U.S. Army. He's a water purification specialist. Not really. That's in the Army now. You've never seen that movie? You should go watch it.
That'd be fun.
Scott, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
You're
Happy to.
what time is it? What time is it there now?
It is 10 minutes after 9 p.m. now.
So it must be 2 o'clock here.
It is, yes. 10 minutes after.
He's 7 hours ahead of us.
Yeah.
His kids just came in. His daughters. He's got 2 daughters. They just came in and gave him a kiss goodnight.
Yeah, so what's the future like? That's what I want to know. You know, I mean, is it more awesome in 7 hours?
No, so if your future's anything like what it was here, it's cold and wet and dreary outside, and there's no football on, and baseball hasn't started yet, so it's kind of miserable. And
Sounds like
what you got to look forward to. Yeah.
It's March 1st, 2020, and we should have did this yesterday, which was February.
Oh, yeah.
On leap year day or whatever you call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had to do an extra day of paperwork because of that.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. So have a great day with that. Anyway, so let's get right into getting to know Scott.
Let's talk about what this episode is brought to you by. Sponsored by Blackline Insurance Group. Visit blacklineinsurancegroup.com. Email ben@blacklineinsurancegroup.com. Text message. Call 918-558-4656. Any kind of insurance, life insurance, health insurance. I just recently did a quote on a marijuana dispensary and a grow, so I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into that. Because guess what, Scott?
What?
Since you've been gone, because Scott used to live here in Oklahoma. He's not from here. He's from terrible state called Texas.
The great state of.
But marijuana is legal now in this state, if that's hard to believe. I know you know.
Just medicinal, right? Not recreational. Is that right?
Right.
So far,
Is there a difference?
there's a difference.
You just got to pay to have a.
Oh, the growers are going to know that. There's a lot of people in the industry that don't know when it goes recreational because their prices are going to drop. You know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So anyway, Scott's in Germany. What are you? What would you call it? Stationed in Germany right now?
Yep. Yeah, I'm stationed here. We do 3-year tours overseas. Basically, if you're accompanied by your family, you do 3 years. So I brought my wife and kids over. We've been here. We're actually like right at the halfway mark. So I've been here a year and a half now.
What if you're not accompanied by your family?
So it depends on where you're going. Over here to Europe, and actually I kind of lied to you, I guess. It was 2 years if you were on your own, but they just changed it to where it's 3 years flat for Europe. But so if you go to South Korea where we have a lot of soldiers, if they go unaccompanied or they're not married, they just go for 12 months, whereas accompanied soldiers go for 2 or 3 year tours, depending on what they're doing.
What's the I mean, without digging too hard on what's going on with you, what's the reasoning for it being longer for people with families so that you have more time to like adjust and be there? Or
I think it's more of it's kind of an incentive thing. So you can come over here, by yourself for a shorter term if you've got something going on with your family back in the States, but it costs money, costs a lot of money to bring family members over, and it's an agreement between the government. So I'm here on what's called the SOFA, which is the Status of Forces Agreement, and it's literally an agreement between the U.S. government and the German government, and part of that SOFA is what their economy can support. So they have to be careful of how many family members come over and how long they stay, because we have like special tax statuses and things that we don't pay all the German taxes. Kind of different weird stuff like that. Yeah.
Huh, man, there's a lot. I didn't think about it until you started saying that. There's a lot goes into that.
A ton. Yeah. It's a big State Department issue. It's a very political and, there's a million different, webs kind of interwoven together that make up all the different stuff, all the different rules that are required for us to be here, for, what allows us to stay here, what we can do while we're here, all those different kind of things.
Wow, man, I learned something. See, this is awesome, man. I didn't know that. And I have a family member that's has been in the military for 15 years, I think, something like that. And he was stationed over in England for a while.
Yep.
And, but he was a single guy at the time, and to be honest with you, he was young, and we didn't really get into all the ins and outs of how and why he was over there, because it was, when he came home, we were just boozing it up, and, trying to celebrate.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, man. That's crazy. So 3 years. Do you have like a choice of where you want to go, or do you choose to go like where you are? Is there?
Yes and no. So with everything in the Army, you always get kind of a vote in what you're doing. You at least get to like have some preferences, but the number one vote, the number one rule is what the Army needs. So you could have, you'd have a wish list 10 miles long and a million reasons why you should get number one on that list. But if the Army needs you elsewhere, that's where you're going to go. So I wanted to come to Germany, and I've been in the Army long enough. I kind of know, I guess you could call it gaming the system, but I know where to kind of find myself a place. And then, so whenever I call, I know that I'm calling to fill a need. So we call it branch. It's kind of the headquarters that does all the assignments. So I'll call them. And like whenever my wife and I decided we wanted to come here, I found where we wanted to go, and I found the opening I wanted to fill, and called them and, hey, you've got this spot opening up. I want to fill that, and I meet all the requirements for it. So it's too easy for them to hit the button and put me on the assignment.
Ah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Hedging the bets there. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Huh. That's cool. Well,
so what exactly are you doing in Germany? What exactly does a normal day look like for you?
So I'm not a high-speed water purification specialist, like you said. I'm military police. I've been in 17 and a half years now. So I'm in a military police company, which is a unit of about 170 soldiers. And we do all the law enforcement for U.S. personnel in this area on all the American bases. I happen to be stationed in the largest condensed area of American forces in Europe. And I'm like 99% sure that that's accurate. I know for sure in Germany, there's more Americans here than anywhere else. So we've got the law enforcement commitment for all of them. And me specifically, I don't do a whole lot of actual like policing anymore. I'm the company operations sergeant. So I'm as far as the enlisted side of it, there's officers and enlisted. As far as the enlisted side of the house goes, I'm the second highest ranking enlisted guy in the company. And I'm in charge of, so I get all the orders that come from on high. I make sure that we execute them, that we have the right people in the right places, making sure that the soldiers that are actually executing the missions have what they need, all the coordination. I could probably make it sound really interesting, but it's really, I spend a whole lot more time behind a computer these days than I used to, but it's kind of the nature of the beast,
So if it was an action movie about cops, then you would be the boss in the office yelling at the main characters?
I would be, so there's the boss that yells, but then there's always like a dude in a smaller office that's the one that's like, pulling his hair out and going crazy because he's the one that's actually got to make all that. I'm that guy.
Oh, you're like the police commissioner.
You're the boss's
yeah.
boss. Yeah, you're the commissioner.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hopefully I get promoted soon. I'll get to be the guy in charge that gets to do the yelling, and I'll just have somebody like me that I just beat down every day. Okay. So I grew up mainly in Amarillo, Texas. I went to school there all the way through 4th grade. And then I moved to San Antonio for a little while. And then I moved to Dallas through junior high and part of my freshman year. And then wound up moving back to Amarillo. And graduated from high school there. My senior year is when 9/11 happened. So like I was in football practice, morning football practice whenever 9/11 went down. And that's kind of what got the ball rolling. As far as me joining, I didn't join, I didn't go down to the recruiting station that day or anything. But I wound up joining about, 6 or 8 weeks before I graduated high school. And they have the delayed entry program. It's still a thing. It's how most people do it. So I had my contract signed, the whole deal, graduated high school, and then went off into the Army in August of 2002. Signed up to be an MP. My dad's a cop. His dad was a cop. My whole deal was I was going to do one contract, get out and be a cop. So joined, did my 5, almost 6 months of training, went to airborne school. And then my first duty station was Washington. And I showed up there in February of 2003. And then I was in Iraq whenever OIF-1 kicked off, and did a year there. I've done 3 total combat tours. So I did the first year of Iraq. I came home. I was only home for 6 months, just enough time to get married, basically, and then went back for another year from November of 2004 to November of 2005. I don't know, you want me to give the Reader's Digest version of the last 17 years, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay. So came back from my second deployment, and I got assigned as a police investigator. So I worked in civilian clothes for 2 years. I did a lot of narcotic unit stuff. There was some gang problems up where we lived that I worked on. And then that's whenever I decided to stay in the Army and became a drill sergeant. Got selected to go be a drill sergeant and train brand new soldiers for 2 years. Got done with that, moved to Texas. So we wanted to go back home to Texas. So I went to Fort Hood. As soon as I got there, they put me on a plane to Afghanistan. Spent a year in Afghanistan. Came back, was thinking I was going to get 3 or 4 years kind of hanging out at home in Texas. Got put on recruiting orders. Wound up in McAlester, Oklahoma for 3 years recruiting. Then went from there to Georgia. While I was in Georgia, I deployed. I say deployed in quotation marks. I went to Kansas for 5 months and worked in the U.S. disciplinary barracks, the big military prison. And then came back for just a few months and actually deployed here to Germany for 9 months. And then went home back to Georgia anyways, where my wife and kids were. And I was there almost a year before we moved here, a year and a half ago. And that's the last 17 and a half years crunched into one.
Wow, man, that's a lot.
You're in Savannah, Georgia, right?
Yeah, so about 45 minutes west of Savannah, but yeah, essentially.
And you lived here for a while, and how
I was there for 3 years. Yep.
And how I met you was through CrossFit. So the old adage where it says CrossFit brings people together. It's true. It's absolutely true.
Really so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I was trying to figure out. I think so. Brian and I got your brother-in-law Brian, and I got to be really good friends really quick, and then you and I got to be pretty good buddies, but I didn't know that you two were related until I think we were hanging out at Brian's house watching a fight or something, and you showed up and I'm like, oh, hey man, I didn't know you were friends with Brian. You're like, well, I am married to a sister. Oh.
Yeah, we're not related and we're not friends, but yeah, I'm here. I think the reason why you didn't really know that is because I mainly worked out at noon at the time.
When most people are working.
Right, when most people were working. So
yeah,
I didn't get to really hang out with you or work out with you that much because of that. You mainly worked out early in the morning, right?
Yeah, I had to. Being a recruiter, especially in an area like Southeast Oklahoma, it's so spread out. I had a Ford Focus. I used to put 1,400 miles on it in a 5-day week. Pretty easy. So I had to work out earlier. It wasn't going to happen because.
That was your work vehicle?
Yeah. You had a little government Ford Focus.
Let's talk a little bit about being a recruiter.
So dealing with the kids is it's really tough, but that's the most rewarding part because there's some amazing stories out there. Like I'll tell you one in a minute. But the hardest part of it is it's such a grind, and what it is, and there's probably people listening, and you guys may have even done it. It's high pressure sales is what it is. And you're on for a number, and you have to get that number, and your bosses force you to just, work yourself to the bone trying to get it, because, I say it's high pressure sales, but the Army needs those people. Like, that's why we're out there recruiting so hard. We need those numbers. You probably saw in the news, I think it was the year before last, when the Army missed its overall recruiting mission by a lot. And it was a huge deal. Like, that is a big problem with our national defense. Like, you have to get these kids, and you have to get people into the Army, and you have to get the right people in there. And so the hardest part is, it's like, you could be on for, say you had to write 2 seniors this month. So you got to put 2 high school seniors in. Like, that's kind of what they want you to write. And if you write a senior and the other good category is a grad, so some kid that's, say he's in college, kind of just messing around somewhere, and you write a senior and a grad, okay, that's awesome. You wrote 2, but you didn't write 2 seniors. You need to go find another senior. Or you could write 5 the month before. As soon as the first hits, you're back on 0. Like, it's, nobody cares. Get back to it. So it's a very challenging job, and the guys that are really good at it and really successful at it, I'm always kind of in awe of, because I was not that good at it. Like, I was successful, but I had to work really, really, really hard just to be successful. Like, I was never going to be recruiter of the year or anything like that. I don't really have a passion for it like some guys do. There's some guys out there, that's just what they're born to do, and you got to watch them. I mean, they get both of you to join the Army right now. And they're just incredible at it. And I just didn't have, that's just not my gift, I guess. But yeah, it's thankless work for sure, and you get used to getting cussed out and yelled at by moms, and, thrown out of schools, and,
Really? Thrown out of schools?
Sometimes, yeah. If there's a bad experience with a recruiter, because there's guys out there that do the wrong thing sometimes, and some recruiter from another service does something wrong in a high school, sends the wrong kind of text message or says the wrong thing to the wrong person, and they don't care that he was, he wasn't in the Army, he was some other service. He's a military recruiter, and they'll tell you to turn around. And then your bosses will be like, all right, well, you need to go stand out there on the corner where they can't tell you to leave and wait on them to get out of school. But, yeah.
Well, and too, to me, you're battling a culture in the United States anyways, from my own perspective. Like, I'm older than you guys, okay? So I graduated in 1995. So in the time that I've been alive, especially since I got out of high school, the culture of teenagers, because I've got a 17-year-old son myself, it's different, man. I mean, by and large, guys with the right attitude that would actually be what I would consider a good soldier, or somebody that would be a good candidate for the Army or any branch of the military, are getting to be scarce. I mean,
yeah.
There's a fewer number to me. When I was in high school, there was probably, and I graduated with 78 people. There would probably, out of the guys in my class, there would have been a solid 10 of us for sure that would have been probably good in the military. There would have been somebody they're looking for. Now, I'd say in my son's class, there's, out of the kids that I've met of his, and they're not bad kids, but kids that would be mentally, socially set up for it, to handle it, or be guys that would be successful in the military. There's probably 10 guys out of 1,000. I mean, it's way, the kids that I meet, I'm just like, I think about in my own mind, there's a certain level of toughness, just like your personality, no longer than we've sat here and talked. I can see it. I recognize it in people that would be, that can handle these positions like you're in. And there's guys, these young kids, dude, they're not set up for it. They'd get in there and they'd be that guy that you'd be like, you would have to end up beating them down because you can't keep their finger off the trigger when you hand them a weapon. You know what I mean? They just can't get it. They won't get it. And that's, by and large, a lot of these kids that I meet, I'm just like, dude, how have you lived as long as you have? You're 17 years old, and I'm shocked. You know what I mean? How have you not died of Tide Pods? You know what I mean? I'm sitting here. So, and that's what I'm saying, while you were sitting there describing it, I can only imagine trying to find not only, I mean, I see you got a quota that you got to meet, so you got to do it by volume, but you're at a disadvantage already because of the culture.
Well, what kind of
Because
kids were you looking for as a recruiter?
Well, so they've got to be the biggest things that you're always looking for is, are they educationally qualified? Are they morally qualified, and are they physically qualified? And there's no, that's where you get those stories of, people always talk about, recruiters lying to them and yada, yada, yada. I don't see how that ever happens because there's so much information out these days. But, the biggest thing people are looking, that the military is looking for, is high school seniors, just because of their age. They're young, reasonably physically fit, and they haven't had enough time to get in trouble. Because what I used to find, or what I was shocked to find in Southeast Oklahoma, was, some 17-year-old kid, could be one of the smartest kids you'd ever talk to, can do chemistry and physics and college algebra and all these other things. But he got a felony whenever he was 14 or 15 years old, and it happens a lot down there, as I'm sure you guys are well aware of. And so, now they're morally disqualified, or, and it's in the news a lot, but we deal with a lot of people that are physically disqualified because they're, overweight or can't meet our minimum physical fitness requirements, which really aren't that high. And now it's a little bit more stringent since I left recruiting, of what they have to do. I couldn't even tell you what the exact requirements are, but the video game culture has kind of taken a lot of that away, just the physical toughness away, the able to run and just do a few push-ups and pick up something heavy and carry it. It is what it is. And so the Army is now having to change, and the military in general, we're having to change, not necessarily the standards to get in, but the way that we go about achieving the standard that we want, and the way that we teach things, and we as an institution are having to kind of change what it is that we are looking for. Excuse me.
I can see that coming, man. I mean, just from like I said, knowing kids in that demographic that you're talking about, in this area, and not even kids that have felonies, but just the physical side. There's a lot of kids out there that aren't doing anything anymore. I mean, like I said, even in my day, and I sound like an old guy talking, but I mean, I am an old guy. But in my time of when I would have been, qualified for the military or whatever, a lot of kids they would do things like haul hay or things that kept them in decent physical shape. And that's not a thing anymore. That's why I'm just like, I'm glad that DARPA was out there developing robots to go fight wars, because we're running out of people to do it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a literal thing. And I mean, I'm kind of being funny, but kind of not, because, dude, I mean, I'm watching it and I can only imagine what it's like on the coasts. I mean, we're already 20 years behind out here in the middle of the nation. I can only imagine what it would be in California or out on the East Coast, New York or something like that.
Yeah, we dealt a lot with, we had a high interest and had trouble getting the people with high interest qualified in volume. I'm not saying like everyone that we ran into that was interested wasn't qualified. That wasn't the case at all. It's more just the volume of it. Whereas, like I hear my buddies that were recruiters, either where they were out on the coast or, up in the Pacific Northwest or in the like New England area, where it's notoriously tough just because of, mindsets and political leanings and things like that. They'll find a lot of people that are qualified with zero interest. So they have the exact opposite problem that we had. So, but I mean, it was all good. I met some amazing, so one of the first kids I saw join the Army, and I just kind of helped him join, because my buddy had been basically working on him for about 1.5 years. So he walked into the office the first time, and he weighed something like 340, 350 pounds, and he's like 5'7".
Oh, okay.
And they said he was 16 or 17 years old. And he walked in and he said, "Hey, look, I know that I can't join the Army the way that I am right now, but can you guys just put me on the scale, we have a body fat measurement system that we do with a tape measure based off some different body measurements, and just tell me where I'm at." So my buddy says he sticks him on the scale. He's big kid, 340 or whatever, tapes him, and you got to come in at like 22% body fat by that measurement. He was like 38% or something. And tells me, he's like, hey man, so this is where you're at. This is where you got to get to. Let us know how it goes. Kid, okay, I will. So this kid walks out the door. My buddy Donnie tells me, he's like, I knew I was never going to see this kid again. Like 3 months later, he rolls in, about 30 pounds lighter, dropped a body fat percentage or two. And then it goes on for, like I said, about 18 months. And then right a few months after I got there, he comes in and he makes the weight standard and the body fat standard and ships off to the Army. And as far as I know, he's still serving today. And I wish I could remember his dang name so I could look him up. But like, I met several kids like that, just kids that came from just dirt, nothing. And you've seen it out there all over Southeast Oklahoma where some of these kids come from is, just terrible. I couldn't, I had it kind of tough growing up a few times in my life, but nothing like what some of these kids came from. And, and I got some of them, I got to help them leave that and join the Army and make, incredible lives for themselves. Some of them are still serving. Some of them aren't. A lot of them I'm not even in touch with anymore. Some of them that didn't join the Army, I'm still in touch with, are out there doing great things. So yeah, very rewarding job, but man, it was tough. It was really hard.
Yeah, I could see that, man. And without exception, in my own personal experience, and I've known plenty of guys that's joined the military, several different branches of the military, for various reasons. And without exception, I've never seen somebody go and at least do their initial enlistment and be done with that and not come out a better organized, well-rounded person. And man, I got no dog in this fight as far as the military goes. I've never went to the military myself. But I mean, everybody I've ever known, top to bottom, it was always a better person for it. So, it's something that I don't necessarily push on my kids necessarily, but I've always left it as an option for their life because it's something I wish I had done. And I'm sure you hear that all the time. I wish I should have joined the military. But I mean, legitimately, I've seen it turn people like you're talking about from bad circumstances, or they have maybe some personal issues, and always at least helps with those guys when they come out. They're different guys. Without exception, those guys are different when they come back. Always for the good,
Yeah, or at least the opportunity to. The military is what it is legitimately whatever you make of it. You can go in with a piss poor attitude, you can piss the whole thing away, and wind up getting kicked out. Other than honorably discharged, dishonorably discharged, whatever, and screw yourself over. You can show up and just get after it for that 3, 4, 5 years and really come out better on the other side, at least with better opportunities. I mean, the college money is unbelievable that you get from an active duty contract. It's unreal.
Yeah. My cousin Dwayne, he's a pilot, and that's he's always has good things to say about it. I mean, he's got as sure with any job, there's things sometimes that he doesn't really appreciate about it, but by and large, I mean, he doesn't feel like he wasted his life, and I know he was a good dude to begin with, but he's had a lot of good opportunities, seen and done a lot of neat things. It sounds like we're making a recruitment video right now, but I know. But though, because of my cousin Dwayne, I have it's something near and dear to me. I mean, I know him very well, so I know he's an Air Force guy or was. And so on that end, I know that he has nothing but good things to say about it. And the decline I see in people, like you were talking about, the interest and those kind of things like that, I think it's unfortunate. I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, they look at it as, well, I don't want to put my son in harm's way. And, all these kind of things like that. And it's that mindset that I think are driving those numbers down. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people, whenever they can't seem to get control of their kid, he's out of control. He does other things. And used to, they talk about, well, we sent him to the military, long time ago, because they knew it would strain people out. Because you get in there and they put you on a path. You don't have a choice. You know what I mean? It takes that mama factor out of it. I don't know what else to say. I don't know how to say it politically correct or whatever, but it takes that you poor baby out of it and sticks you in there and goes, hey man, it's like this.
Gotta grow
line up, and that's what I mean about people come out of it and they're more well-adjusted person. I mean, you could see a difference in the way they carry themselves even. I mean, you can tell I've been able to pick military dudes out, and not in a negative way. I'm talking about in a positive way. A lot of times you talk to somebody and you're already getting that vibe of this dude's been in the military before. You know what I mean? If he seems well organized and he doesn't mind making some hard choices and stuff like that. A guy I work with a lot that works for a different company just found out he was in the Navy like 3 days ago, and I've worked with him for a year. I knew it. I knew he was in the military somehow because he was too willing and too able to make these hard decisions. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that all too often isn't talked about. Everybody wants to talk about, well, you then go over there and get killed in duty. And that's true. Those things are all true. But I mean, there's a lot of people in this life, and I'm not trying to cheapen anybody's life. I'm just saying, what else are you going to do? There's plenty of people in this world that would have been good in the military that think that doing nothing is going to keep them safe. You know what I'm saying? And myself included, I mean, my mom, when I talked about going to the military, freaked out. She was.
Dude, my stepmom was hiding all the recruiting brochures, and I couldn't figure out why the military didn't want me, and because my stepmom was hiding everything.
Oh yeah,
because she was pissed.
She didn't want you.
No, hell no. She still gets mad whenever she talks about it. Like she's proud of me and all that, but yeah, she can't deal. She doesn't like it.
And the worst thing I say the worst thing for my mom was that I did well on the ASVAB whenever I took it in high school.
Yeah.
And, I had
all that, man, you might as well put a red beacon on your head for recruiters. Yeah. You could get on the ASVAB.
Yeah, these dudes were, they were around and everything. And, my mom was like, and I shouldn't, hindsight, I shouldn't have listened to her. I should have just done what I wanted to do. Because I was interested. I was that kid that was interested, ended up getting talked out of it. And 1,000 times. I could say unequivocally that it was probably one of the biggest mistakes I ever made was not doing it. You know what I mean? As far as it organizing me, and I've spent years later all over the map. You know what I mean? Yeah, trying to get what I probably could have got out of 3 or 5 years in the military. And now I had to get old and unable to run around and that kind of thing like that before it finally it would have been taken care of early. I feel like.
Well, is that what you ran into most? Like, is mama's parents?
It's I'm not going to say it was the most because I can't think of there's just this one thing that was the biggest problem, but that was a big one. That's the thing with so like I said, high school seniors they're it for the military. That's what that's the best that you can grab, and I don't care if the kid's 18 and already has his own apartment and doing whatever. He still needs mom and dad's approval 100% of the time. Not legally, we can get him down there and get him signed up, but I mean, hell, I'm 36 and I still look for my parents' approval, so I think it's like that with everyone. And there's, and Lucas, with your kid, or you have 2 sons, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Ben, with yours, with the ages that they're getting to now, those kids know nothing except for being a country at war. And, and there's a little bit of hero culture out there with like veterans and everything, but for the most part, on the it's doom and gloom. They don't talk about the MP squad that trained, an Iraqi or an Afghani police station for 9 months from nothing to, now they're actually doing patrols and keeping their village. They talk about the, especially in the height of the wars was, how many got killed today or this week or whatever it was. It's doom and gloom. So, I get it, but yeah, that's a big deal. You still got to get mom's approval. Every day.
So when you're talking to the parents, that's basically what you talk about. If they brought that up, is you would say, "Hey, there's so much more to it than seeing on the news."
Yep. Yeah, you had to let them know what reality was like, and they would freak out because I got to McAllister in 2012, so I recruited from 12. So I recruited for like my 10th through my 13th year, roughly, in the Army, and I had done at that point 36 months in combat. And that they couldn't believe that was, the case. And I would have to kind of show them what the reality of that is, And
you would never be standing in front of them if you had been in combat that long. They're like, you're alive,
Yeah. Yeah, they don't. And I get it. I was the same way. Like whenever I went to Iraq in 2003, I just assumed whenever we crossed the berm into Iraq that, tank rounds were going to be going off and artillery and just firefights like crazy. And it was really, really quiet and still for several hours, you know. And I mean, we got into plenty of stuff, and I've been in plenty of that, but
all the time.
no. But yeah, it's not just like, I was like, man, how am I going to just get shot at for 365 days? And I didn't. Like, it's, you know.
So tell us a little, well, you were going to tell a story about the recruiting. Is that the story you were going to tell about?
Yeah, the kid I was talking about. I mean, there's a million funny ones out there, just crazy stuff that happens. I'm trying to think of something specific now, but I mean, you just herding cats all the time. I was always driving around, you know, my area, I wrote a few kids and I say wrote, so we talk about writing contracts. Whenever you put a kid in the Army, you wrote that kid. You know. So, but we were broken down into areas, and I wrote a few kids out of McAllister, but my main area was our like real southeast part of our responsibility, so I basically had like Antlers east to Broken Bow and kind of Ida Bell and in those areas. So all those little bitty towns between Antlers and Broken Bow were mine. And then I had Broken Bow. Ida Bell technically belonged to another school, but I used to go poach it all the time. And so I spent a lot of time in Broken Bow.
I'm sure you know, I don't want to necessarily say anything bad about that part of the world. I'm just sure that there was there'd be some kids that would be kind of backwoods down there. I could see.
Oh man, it's different for sure. I mean, sometimes you feel like you're in a movie. I'm just, it's nuts
down there.
That's the belly of the nation, man. That'd be like going in, you know, the mountains in Kentucky or something like that. I mean,
yeah.
I'm sure the good thing though is you find less kids that have been in trouble because there's less, you know. No.
There's nothing to do. I mean,
there's less police presence down there. You know what I mean? You can go down there and shoot guns off wherever, you know, and not get caught, and go down there and you get away with more stuff, I would think, in the rural part.
I don't know. No, man. I mean, I'm sure, you know, just like Wilburton was 20 years ago. I mean, it can be a little bit Wild Westish.
Well, you do run into, especially now down in the Broken Bow area, you got a lot of people from Texas that are buying land out there,
mm-hmm.
big time. So I would think
there's a lot of and all that. They got these really nice
so I would think you would run into a lot of kids that, you know, are getting in trouble in Texas or whatever. So their parents move and think it's gonna. I don't know. Maybe so.
You get some of it, yeah. Every day was different. There were no 2 days the same, man. It was. It was crazy.
Well, you're in Bigfoot country down there, you know.
Yeah.
Bigfoot country. Yeah. Literally Bigfoot country.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, you know, your time overseas. No, not Germany. Let's talk about
Iraq and Afghanistan.
First, right?
Yeah. So I did. Like I said, I did the initial. We call it, OIF, Operation Iraqi Freedom. So I did OIF 1, and I was a brand new kid. I turned 19 in airborne school, so I turned 20 in Iraq during OIF 1. And so we did, you know, the whole invasion. And I wasn't like, my unit wasn't on like we weren't the first ones crossing the berm with like 3rd Infantry Division or anything. We did during the invasion piece, we did a whole lot of supply escort runs, trying to get ammo and stuff, because our forces were outpacing logistics. And if you watch or read anything about the initial invasion, like that was the biggest problem we ran into was, you know, we couldn't get enough stuff forward because they were advancing so fast. So we did a whole lot of running back and forth from Kuwait, wound up in Baghdad, and we wound up doing kind of a rotation. So have you guys know who Paul Bremer is? He was essentially the U.S. president of Iraq before their government was made sovereign again. He's the one that announced whenever Saddam Hussein got killed, he said, "We got him."
Yes.
Yeah.
So we got assigned to his security detail. We essentially augmented like Blackwater security. So I know you know who Blackwater is, the contractors, and they've had a lot of controversy. So we augmented them. We would rotate between doing security for him, different security for like kind of his staff, I guess you would call it, different elements of of his organization. It was a coalition provisional authority. And then we would rotate through doing quick reaction force, which we called QRF. So you would kind of do 10 days on each one. rotating through. So I got to see some really cool stuff. Like whenever he announced Saddam Hussein getting captured, so that conference room that he's in, I could drive you to it today in Baghdad. It wasn't far from what's now the U.S. Embassy that we operated out of. But I was like standing in the hallway behind him of that room whenever he announced it, just as a part of his security detail. And then, so anyways, did that through OF1. That was it was a crazy deployment, but mainly just kind of getting to be a part of an invasion force. Like it's a whole different animal than what we do now with things being established if you were to go over there. My second deployment, I got assigned to the security detail for our brigade commander, so a full bird colonel. And I was actually like his driver. And we put, I wish I had counted the miles that year, but we were essentially legitimizing the Iraqi police. So he was in charge of all the Iraqi police in Iraq for that year. And one of the commanding general of the forces over there at the time, like he called that year the year of the police because they got legitimized. So I got to see a lot of things. One of the units that fell under us was in charge of Saddam Hussein's custody, basically, which happened to just be a couple blocks down the road from where we lived on the compound that we were on. So I've actually seen like Saddam Hussein in person a few times before he got hung.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it's a little wild. Like I've seen him in person, like from, I mean, I guess I've been, I don't know, within 15, 20 feet of him from his cell, I guess.
Well, he was when you saw him? He was
Yeah. Yeah, they had where we lived was called Camp Victory, and it was kind of backed up to Baghdad International Airport, which we owned at the time too. And it's kind of funny, his cell was in one of the little sub buildings of one of his palaces of his own, and they turned it into a cell, like a high.
Appropriate. Hell
That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of wild. And the FBI or some three-letter agency ran the site, but we had some MPs that lived there and did the actual security for it. So that colonel that I worked for would actually have to go and like do inspections over there and make sure everything was up to snuff and all that. So I'd tag along so that I got to see the man. And that was about it. And then my biggest one though is Afghanistan. So what's up?
You never said, "Hey, what's up, Saddam"? You never said.
Nah, you didn't. Something that high vis like that, you don't mess around because they'll snatch you up in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you're probably not even. I would assume you're not allowed to talk to him or anything like that. I mean, did he?
I guess I could have if there was a reason to, but I mean, he had guards. Literally, there would be two MPs right outside of his cell that kind of handled anything that was going on. So there'd have been nothing to really say, I guess.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame anybody for, if I was in the neighborhood, I'd want to at least go by and see him. I mean, this guy that you got, as far as putting a face on, what would you say, terrorism, anti-Americanism.
Well, so it wasn't known that he lived there, like that's where his cell was. So everyone assumed there's a high value. It's called, I can't remember what I can't remember the name. Anyways, on that same camp and out towards Baghdad, towards the airport was like the high value camp at the time. That's where all the big names were. And that's where everyone assumed he was. Nobody even so there was like a unit living next door. They didn't know he was in there.
Hell yeah. Hey, that makes sense because
the less people know, the better.
Yeah, I'd have 4 different spots where I would say, we got who, but this is, one of the guys on the deck of cards is right over there. You know what I mean? So you got to throw people off or whatever.
Deck of cards.
That's what they had.
Right.
In the news, there was this deck of cards of people,
I have it somewhere, like the one that they gave us. It's in a box, probably in storage in Georgia, waiting on me to come back. But yeah, I've got it. It was a blue deck of cards with people's faces on it.
Yeah, dude, I've read enough books about it. But it was something that, of course, like everybody else in America, especially in the onset of it, it was very interesting to me because, for one, we were at war, and I would say, there was Desert Storm and stuff like that whenever I was young, but like full on actual, high-powered military involvement. This was the kind of the biggie, especially in my lifetime. So
Yeah.
I was into it, man. It was always one of those things that I read a bunch of books about a whole bunch of stuff that happened over there, and that deck of cards thing was always like, I was like, I wonder who could, how does this shit come to light,
Right.
or how do they, but you're always going to be on the look for these people because they could be anywhere. They couldn't necessarily track these dudes down. Of course, for all we know, they knew right where they were all the time. And for the common military guy, it was definitely a way for them to say, looking out for this dude, because they were catching people. I remember reading some stuff and watching some videos. They would be out in the middle of absolute wilderness and raid someplace, and one of the high-ranking dudes would be there.
One of the generals or somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, they had like take pictures of people and stuff and go, "Is this guy anybody? Is this somebody?" And they're like, "Jesus, dude, okay, we got to figure out a way for these guys to know who these people are." To kind of calm it down or whatever. But yeah, it's interesting. That stuff. That's awesome. That I can't believe that. I can believe it, but it's just neat that you saw that guy. And I hate to make him into a celebrity because he sucked, but he was.
He is though.
Very famous. But.
Yeah. Modern day, he's up there with Stalin, Hitler, and those types. So yeah, it's pretty surreal.
Did you make eye contact with him?
Yeah.
Awesome. If I would have moved until he looked up at me,
Yeah, he knew he was safe in that facility, so he'd walk around, he'd walk up, he'd ask his guards questions, whatever, and he'd do his thing.
He was safe for a little while.
Yeah.
It's crazy, dude. That's weird. Well, you get to thinking about it, and these, people are people. He's just as real as we are here. But it seems like it's like watching football on TV for me. Like I'm a big Dallas Cowboys fan, so stepping on that field, you're like, this field's not near as big as it looks on TV. You know what I'm saying? You're saying this is just 100 yards. It's just a regular football field.
Right.
But on TV, it seems twice as big.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's crazy. The stadium's giant, but the football field itself is just like in any high school stadium. You're like, wow, it's crazy. So I
spent 2 years in Baghdad, 2 years of my life. So you watch the shock and awe videos that they took. Most of those videos come from a hotel downtown that all the media has stayed at since Desert Storm, right? And so every time those bombs hit, I can tell you what those buildings are, and I have pictures of my own of them, like the bomb crater in them from that bomb, because like I said, I spent 2 years there, so I know all those places, and yeah.
That's weird, man. Well, as far as the people go, and I'm not digging for your opinion necessarily on.
Mm-hmm.
And you can give it, of course. I'm not trying to cut that. I'm just saying, what was your impression of the military presence there? As far as what did the people think of it? Did anybody ever? I'm sure you interacted with people there. So
yeah, all the time. So the first year I was there, it was very welcoming. They wanted us there because we pushed the regime out and all of that. And then as we were leaving in April of 2004 from our first deployment, that's whenever everything was really starting to turn. So the last week or two, I guess, I'd have to look the dates up to be for sure, but the last week or two of my first deployment was when those Blackwater security contractors were killed and dragged through the streets and everything in Fallujah. And then the whole Fallujah siege kicked off and almost got us stuck there for another 3 months. And then I went home, like I said, for 6 months. And then we turned around and came back. And that's literally 2 weeks later, the second Fallujah, Battle of Fallujah, I guess, the second one kicked off in November of 2004. So, and the civilian populace that's whenever, their opinions kind of started to turn. And I guess you can see why, because a lot of civilians did get killed. And that's, unfortunately, that's whenever we go to war, people need to keep that in mind. That's something that's going to happen. So, you start saying oh yeah, we need to go into whatever country and just, wipe them out. Okay, you say that, women are going to die, children are going to die, innocent men are going to die, American soldiers are going to die, their soldiers are going to die. that is what it is, but you need to understand, like, that's what's going to happen. And there was a lot of, it was a crazy time. So yeah, my second deployment to Iraq, they were not nearly as welcoming, but that was right as everything was really getting crazy. That's whenever IEDs were really, really becoming prominent. They started getting bigger and more advanced while I was there. And the way I understand it is, like, a year or two later is whenever it got to be the worst. Luckily, I wasn't there for that. But yeah, so I got to see kind of the full turn. But most people there are just like people in America. They just want to be left alone. They just want to be able to live their life. They want to be able to go to work. They don't want their kids messed with. They don't want to be messed with. Just they just want to do their thing. But
that's what I worked with a guy that was a Vietnam veteran, and that's what, of all the things, I may have talked about it on the podcast before even, but one of the things that he said was when he was over in Vietnam that this lady, he saw her in some town or something like that, and he wasn't there for anything official. He was there, I think, doing something on his own, like personal time or whatever. But this lady could tell, he's obviously an American, so she comes up to him and she starts saying, "Why won't you leave our country?" And he's like, "We're trying to help your country." She's like, "No, you're bringing things here." And I'm not trying to be, let me just stop right here. I'm not trying to be anti-America or anything like that. I'm just relaying what he said. That's why I asked the question. Was she was saying, "Well, we don't want you to be here anymore." It's like you said, though, in the initial part of it, yeah, you're taking away this huge problem. Then it starts to be, well, there's war all over the place, and as long as you guys are here, there's going to be war. So I can see how that tide would turn.
People on both sides think that, it will just take a short amount of time. And when it takes a ton more time than what they initially thought, then it starts feeling like it's being, drawn out.
Well, like Scott was saying, at the end of the day, you have your kids, your wife, and you're trying to live your life.
On a normal life.
I could imagine if war had broken out in America, it would disrupt everything. I mean,
Right.
You can't go to school, you can't do anything without all security checkpoints and all those things that are necessary to try to keep people from killing each other and all those kind of things like that. I could see trying to organize that would be an issue. So, and that's what kind of drove my interest on it. Now, whenever so you've been military police your entire career? Is that
Yeah.
what you've done? Man, that's crazy, man. And I can see why in that line why you would have been involved in so many things that are like would have been in the media and all that. Dude, that would suck on your part to me, because it's like you said, very high vis, very very much. If the cameras are around, you guys are usually around and that kind of thing like that. So
yeah, it's I've been on the involved or on the fringes of a lot of big things just by chance. Like our unit responded to I believe it was the Jordanian embassy got bombed in Baghdad in either late 03 or early 04 during my first deployment. And then the UN headquarters in Baghdad had a big suicide bombing. It was a big deal at the time. Doesn't get a whole lot of press now. But if you just Google it, it was such a huge deal that we responded to it. We weren't there whenever it happened, but our unit responded as a quick reaction force, and then just wild stuff.
On a thing like that, I mean, I'm sure you guys would. I'm assuming that you would be part of setting up some sort of order, trying to get everything back in order whenever something like that happens.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it turns into our what's the right word? I don't know, like our mentorship of like the Iraqi police or the Afghan police, getting them to do it. So we would have to respond, make sure it was being done properly, but trying to get them to actually, do the work.
Were they what I guess what I'm trying to say is, did they seem like guys that wanted to take charge, or were you guys, was it easy to get these guys up into shape, or?
No, not at all. Part of it probably partially our fault. I mean, we naturally try to do things, we try to set things up the way that we do them, and that doesn't work in their culture and the way that they're brought up. So we try to create a police force that mimics ours, especially in like Afghanistan, but doesn't always work. Like tribal law rules all, Like in Afghanistan, one time there was a murder in the village that one of our police stations owned. And we went, talked to the dude that killed the guy the night before. Like, we're literally standing outside his house. The Afghan police are talking to him. And at this point, the Afghan police are in charge. If they make a call, we have to kind of go with it. And they turn around, they're like, okay, we're done. Let's go. I said, no, you got to arrest that guy. Like, he murdered that kid last night. He goes, yeah. But like 3 weeks ago, he killed like 4 of these guys' goats. I said, okay, you don't get to kill somebody for that. And they're like, yeah, you do. Like, he earned it. It's his problem. And I was like, so what happens now? And they're like, well, so his family's probably going to kill somebody from his family. And like, that's just, it's old school, man.
So,
Especially where we were. Huh?
Was the guy not arrested?
No. I think eventually he had to go to court. Like, so they would have these courts, these tribunals, but I don't even remember if anything ever happened to him.
That would make it almost impossible. See, that's the culture, that barrier. I would assume, I'm glad that you told that story, because it kind of goes along with what I was wondering about, how many times our Americanized sense of justice ran up against, because you're trying to get these guys, I'm sure, up and where they can handle their own thing. So, yes, like you said, I'm sure you run into that thing of, well, that's not how we do it here. Yeah. So that's a perfect example of how difficult I'm sure your job was, of trying to recognize, well, we got to set up some form of justice, but then again, we're not there to occupy and turn it into America. We're trying to turn it into an organized Afghanistan or organized Iraq or whatever. So, yeah, dude, I can't imagine trying to navigate their cultural things because we're so different. You know what I mean? I mean, ours, and that we seem more organized, but there's a whole lot more like red tape and bureaucracy or whatever to go through to get things done. But these guys are pretty cut and dry. I mean, it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Well, and you think like the Hatfields and McCoys got like long-standing beef. Like, we're talking thousands of years that different families have hated each other there. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just goes back to the beginning of time that, you know, somebody that lives here and somebody that lives here, you know, and they're only a few miles away, just hate each other.
So the guy that killed his goats he killed his goats probably because he didn't like the family to begin with, right? His family,
yeah,
other families, and they've been feuding through
thousands of years. Yeah.
So did the guy in this instance, did he seek out the guy that killed his goats and kill him, or did he catch him?
I don't know if I can't even remember. Like, so I know that sounds terrible, but it's,
well, I mean, you've had
fairly common. It's not common for somebody to get killed over a goat there, but it's not that unusual either. So it was like, all right, you know.
That's crazy, dude. So whenever you run into a thing like that, you guys are letting them handle it. But how tied were your hands as far as did you have the ability to override, or I mean, did it progress?
No. So that was a thing. So we actually had a military attorney, an Army attorney, and she was amazing. But she would go on patrol with us. And so we were there mentoring the Afghan police. She was there mentoring their lawyers and judges and things that they had they weren't tied in with the police, but like their compounds were essentially in the same place. And so I had her to kind of bounce things off. And hey, ma'am, this is what's going on. Like, do we need to snatch this dude up or what? She said, no, it's their law. Like, it's for them to enforce. And so no, I couldn't override it. Like, I couldn't take him to jail, because all I'd have done is taken him to the jail of the people that were refusing to arrest him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. Well, so would you say then that maybe your responsibility by and large was like tactically? I mean, would you teach them to go in and get these things, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We were trying to teach them how to actually patrol. They wouldn't know how to read a map. So you're talking about dudes like, so the police captain there, and he and I were actually very close by the time I left. And unfortunately, he got killed a couple years ago. His name was Dr. Daktar. He and I were actually very, very, very good friends by the end of it. He was a mujahideen fighting the Soviets back in the day. And then as the Taliban came in, he fled to Pakistan for several years, and then came back once the Americans came back and helped establish the police, the Afghan National Police. But he didn't know how to read a map. Like, he didn't know. I showed him a map, and he was like, oh, okay, I hear you talking about maps, but I've never looked at one before. And then I would try to point things out on the map, not thinking about it, like, hey, we're going to take a patrol here and do this. And he's like, he would move the map off the table and be like, which mountain are you going to?
He knew English?
No, I had interpreters with me.
Oh, wow.
So I had two interpreters. They both live in the States now, but they're Afghanis. They were from right there in Kunar. And one of my interpreters, he's known Doctor, that police captain, his entire life. Like his dad was friends with him. Like it was kind of wild. But
wow, it's I think that's neat in itself that you can become friends with somebody that you can't really. I mean, you're communicating with them, but someone is in between.
Yeah. Yeah, we were great friends. So Irfan, my interpreter, I haven't talked to him in several months. He moved out to it took him like 8 or 9 years to get a visa to move to the States. And he lives out in California, but he reached out to me whenever a doctor was killed, and I was sad. Like he was a really, really good friend of mine, but didn't speak a word of English. I didn't speak any Pashtun. But yeah, it was wild, man.
Did he have a pretty good sense of humor?
Yeah, you could joke them, but it's a different sense of humor. Like, so these people, they didn't have electricity. Like, so whenever you go to Baghdad, whenever I was there, it was like going back to the 1940s or 50s with the way that they did things and the way that, kind of infrastructure was set up, pretty much because of the wars. But going to Afghanistan was like going back to the 1600s. Like when the sun went down, they lit a fire inside of the big main room of their house that didn't have a roof on it. And that's how they stayed warm. And that's where they cooked their food on their, they put their stove there. They didn't have electricity. Like it wasn't a thing. There's no power grid. There's no any of that where we were.
Yeah, I've read about it, man. Very primitive people. And that's what you're saying about the tribal part of it. One thing that drives that is because they don't know anything else, man. I mean,
you tell them there's a government. They don't, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. I don't care what the government says. Like the government's not right here dealing with this. I am.
Yeah.
And so they take care of it.
Yep. Yeah. Killed 4 of my goats and he's dead now.
Well, I mean, you got to think about how savage. That's what I think that maybe definitely our government may have not been ready for whenever they say, well, we're going to Afghanistan and do this, this, and this is, I mean, these guys are hardened people. You know what I mean? I mean, you got military guys who are used to running water and electricity, not to downplay military, but I mean, they're used to certain amenities, and these other people have been living, old school, you got to kill something to be able to eat and walking up and down mountains all their lives.
Which I think, in that instance makes it that much harder to go in, take out the top guy, and then leave. You can't do that because if you do, then the next top guy takes over and nothing changes. The next guy. So I think it kind of comes. What I was going to say earlier is, it's a big inconvenience for the people that are there already, and then that after a while they get so sick of seeing the American people and the American military. Not a really good analogy, but here we are in McAllister and everybody wants new roads, right? Because our roads are terrible. But when they go to put a new road in, you'll have everybody and their dog bitch and complain and moan.
Losing their mind. Yep.
The inconvenience.
For the inconvenience. Sure. And it drags on and drags on. So I can only imagine how, both sides, the American people, they're like, man, we've been to war forever.
We got to think about this, though, and be like, but what you're saying, only imagine if that road is keeping them from getting to church. You know what I'm saying? Because everything's theological over there, man. Everything's religion-based.
Right.
And like Scott was saying,
sure.
Thousands of years, and this is all from me reading about it, dude. I don't have, I'm just trying to go along with what you're saying about the deep-seated, the mentality of those people, man. I can't imagine, not only that, but the disconnect you have because you have to have an interpreter. Dude, you have the patience of, I can't even imagine trying to do the things you were doing with just that obstacle in your way of, you can't just speak to somebody. You got to tell this dude's got to tell him. You got to listen to the answer, then tell you what the answer was. You guys are looking at each other. What's cool, though, is just like you were saying, people are people.
Right.
Even though these people live like that, we all kind of want the same thing. And I didn't realize that, man. Growing up in America, we get taught that America's the greatest country in the world. Still believe that, but I'm just saying, whenever I was young, tended to believe that we were smarter than everybody too.
Yeah.
Like our IQs were higher than somebody that might live in Afghanistan. That's not necessarily true. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
you're better educated doesn't mean that you're smarter.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely. Yeah. So, and that's a neat thing that kind of to illustrate what you were saying is that you can make good friends with these people that even though culturally you're different, you know, language and everything else, it's a pretty awesome experience. I think that I wish more people, even myself included, could be a part of, so you could realize that, you know, people are people, even though we speak different languages, that kind of thing like that. It's crazy. And I had to get to be an old man before I realized that. You know?
So your friend Doctor, he was killed a couple years ago. How did he die?
An IED, a roadside bomb. From what it sounds like he was assassinated. Like they set it up outside the police station specifically for him and got him. They tried to kill him while I was there in the same way. They just mistimed the bomb, tore a truck up, but kind of rung his bell, but they got him, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was he an older guy? Was he?
Yeah, I want to say he was probably in his mid-50s, early 60s, which is pretty old over there. I mean, you know, they don't tend to live into their 80s and 90s as a real common thing.
Well, no, because it sounds like if you mess up just a little bit, you know, accident. Maybe
I mean,
kill somebody's goat. Maybe you might die.
Well, and Kunar is, I mean, the hotbed of Afghanistan. I mean, there's a million. I mean, there's a lot. Most of the movies about Afghanistan, a lot of them center around Kunar province. You know, Bin Laden was known to be in Kunar province. So it's all right. I mean, it was just a dangerous, crazy place. It was the Wild West.
So you were involved, or correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll cut this out if I'm wrong, but weren't you involved in a high-profile search for someone over?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a British aid worker, and I wish I'll Google it. Here, I'll just Google it while I'm talking. But British aid worker, she got kidnapped in Kunar. Yeah, so her name was Linda Norgrove. She was a British aid worker, and she got kidnapped along with like her escorts in Kunar. And it was like, what does this say? I want to say it was like 10 or 11 days. Everything just stopped while we were there, while we searched for her. And then we wound up, and I say we, I wasn't one of the ones that did, but her location got pinpointed one night, and, you know, they sent in, you know, SEAL Team 6 dudes, and she unfortunately got killed during the rescue. But yeah, it was wild. Like, and that's what happens in Kunar. Like, you're rolling through there, and all of us were saying it, like, I cannot believe an aid worker was rolling through here with nobody. The people with her weren't even armed, you know, that were supposed to protect her. And I just could not imagine. And she had all the good intent in the world. Like, I've read quite a bit about her just over the years, and she was just out there just pure-hearted, trying to help people, and thought that would keep her safe, and ran into the wrong people, you know. That snatched her up, and it's happened a lot over there. Like, if you Google that, you'll find 10 other stories that you've never heard before of aid workers and things getting kidnapped. And sometimes they get rescued or get released, and other times, you know, unfortunately, like in her case.
How was she killed?
So it was friendly fire. It was one of the story, as I remember it, was they were taking fire from a building. And a grenade was thrown, I think, into an adjacent room. And they didn't think that she was in there. Like, the intel had her in the wrong spot, kind of thing. And I think it was thrown into an adjacent room, but then still some of the shrapnel got her, and she wound up dying en route to the hospital, from what I understand. But that's a little bit of, you know, me trying to remember 10 years ago now.
Right.
So, but yeah, it was a friendly fire type of thing. But, you know, that speaks a lot to our, you know, the integrity of our force. Was I remember being told, like, the guy that actually threw the grenade is the one, like, once he figured out what happened, he's the one that said, hey, she wasn't killed by one of them. It was, you know, I threw this is what happened. And that's what got her. So, and he could have very easily just let the narrative go of, you know, oh yeah, it was a suicide vest or something like that. But
right. Or he could blame it on, you know, them, of course, you know.
Well,
yeah.
That goes along with, I mean, like people always say about the rules of engagement and all that stuff like that. I mean, you're wanting perfect behavior out of imperfect people. I mean, these people are your life. Could you imagine sitting there? You're shooting people. They're shooting at you, and you're supposed to say, she could be in there. Whenever there's 5 guns shooting at you out of a window, you're like, hey, one grenade's going to take care of these people. And you do that, and then that's just an unfortunate thing.
Well, like you said, they had bad intel anyways, and they thought that she was in a different part of the building, or
yeah, something like that. Like I said, one thing I'm not is a SEAL Team 6 operator, so I was definitely not on the target that night. But the way that I understand it is, they thought she was in this one specific spot. She wasn't, and things got hot right away. As soon as they got there, of course, and unfortunately, those things happen. It's dangerous and unfortunate, but
how many surgical things though get done by the military?
Oh, dude, every single night over there, especially whenever I was there, they were just, that one, terrible incident gets highlighted, but they don't talk about that. Probably that exact team, whoever they were, probably did 150 in a row that went perfect before that one. And
sure,
but,
that's crazy, dude. I couldn't imagine. That speaks to that lady's, wanting to be out there doing that kind of thing. I guess just
with no protection,
had the wrong idea about the kind of place she's going to. I guess.
Talk about a pure ideal, man. Willing to go somewhere like that with no protection whatsoever, just to help people. That's all she cared about. It's unbelievable. I know I don't have that in me.
Me either. Hey, there's no way, dude. I wouldn't even want to go, like, even on my own. If somebody goes, hey, man, we'll give you a submachine gun. You can go in there with that. I'm like, no, dude. Not by myself, I'm not. You know what I mean? Give me 5 guys that I trust,
Yeah.
and we might go look at it from a ways away or something like that. I'm not going in there with nothing. God, no.
So did you, while you were there and you were dealing with, teaching and training the other guys, did you ever run into a situation where maybe you thought, and I'm sure you had it in the back of your mind the whole time, that there was somebody amongst, the guys that were, that you were around that might be against you?
Yeah, we were always on guard for it. It wasn't the epidemic that it has been in the last few years while I was there. In the last, I can't remember what year it was, but some ungodly percentage of our killed and wounded in action was from, friendly fire from our partner force in Afghanistan. So we were always on guard for it. And we would kind of set ourselves up in a way to watch for it. We were always, we never let them, we were never grouped up together and kind of surrounded by them just in case. We were always interspersed throughout. So if you're doing a patrol and you're walking, you just imagine like the file that you'll see in movies where everyone's kind of one behind the other. Whenever you're going through some, crowded areas that force you into that formation, it wouldn't be like a line of Americans and then a line of Afghan army or Afghan police. It would be like an American for, Afghans, and then an American, and we would kind of be interspersed so that we could have our eyes on everyone and kind of watch each other's back. So we never had an incident. One time we thought we did. We were doing a night patrol, and some farmers came out of a field, and it was in the middle of the summer, so it was not uncommon for them to do some work at night because it's so hot during the day. But people bearing bombs look a lot like farmers. So it was a little nerve-wracking. We saw them out there working, drew down on them. Our interpreters called them forward. We let the Afghan National Police handle it. Everything they had in their hands was actual farming equipment, so everything was good. Well, as we're walking away, 3 shots ring out real fast. Just bah, bah, bah. I thought, well, this is it. One of these dudes turned around and fired on us and turned around, and the Afghan policeman that had been talking to him had a negligent discharge. So he had his finger on the trigger, squeezed off 3 rounds, almost shot these 2 dudes, these 2 farmers.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, oh God. So we sort out that everything's okay and run over there. And one of the Afghan lieutenants that was on the patrol with us, it's like, hey, we'll take care of this. Da, 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 da. So yeah, this is yours to deal with, but he needs to be disciplined, whatever. And I meant like officially disciplined, like, put it on paper, like we've been showing you how to do it, report it to higher, yada, yada, yada. So we were at the station every day. Well, like 3 days later, and I reported it in my report and, moved on. Not that big a deal because no one got hurt. like 3 days later, we're at the station. I'm sitting there with Doctor. I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, what happened with the guy that fired off the rounds the other night? And he said, oh, his punishment's almost up. And I said, well, what's his punishment? He said, come here. And he opened a closet, and this poor dude had been sitting in this closet, locked in it, in the dark for like 3 days. I don't know how much food or water they were giving him. Like they basically put him in solitary confinement in the police station. And I was like, all right, he probably learned.
When you started this story, I honestly thought it was going to be a lot worse than that. So that was pretty easy punishment compared to what I was thinking.
Well, think about the harshness of that compared to what would have happened in the military. You know, I mean, you probably get rode up, and you know,
Oh yeah,
it'll be on your little jacket that you had that or whatever. But
well, he should restart his firearm training. His weapons training.
yeah.
Is that?
Oh man.
Or did he just go right back to where he was at before? Did they think?
Oh well.
Or however long he was in solitary confinement, they thought that was
We mentored them to redo firearms training with them, and then of course we always took them to the range. We had our own weapons range. We'd
right.
take them to and train them, and so we tried to influence that to be a little bit more a little bit of a softer story, I guess you could say, to try to help them out. But
I mean, I think the U.S. as a cop or whatever, if that were to happen, you're probably going to get suspended for a little while, and then you're gonna have to do some weapons training. This guy got suspended, but he got put.
He got suspended. Yeah.
it's hilarious, dude. You're like, so what happened to the guy? He's in the closet behind you. Oh, he's right here.
Yeah, that was it, and that's how they did business, man. It was.
And so when the guy gets out, like, did he say anything? Like when he opened the door, did he say? Hey?
Well, he was doing. I mean, he was in a closet with no light, so it was like that. You see, like. I don't know, on Shawshank Redemption or something, where some dude, Andy was in solitary and they opened the door and his eyes can barely open, and he's looking. I'm like, oh my God! So I had him shut the door. I was like, listen, we got to do something a little bit different. Let's.
And he was like, what? This is good.
Yeah.
I did not kill him.
Yeah, I took care of it. All right, man. But yeah.
The only thing he's got left is get his index finger cut off, and then he can go back to work.
Yeah, then he'll move on. He'll be fine. Yeah.
So this guy, and I don't want to harp on a funny story, I guess, but did this guy? I need to know more details. Did this guy?
Yeah.
Did he have clothes on, or was he just in his?
Yeah, he was like in his like he had on like his white under T-shirt or whatever, and his Afghan police pants. But
were you there when he was released? Like when he was?
No.
And
no,
so,
but because what you don't want to do, you don't want me, the American, to come in and cut their power out from under them, right? Of their supervisors.
Right.
So his supervisor imposed this punishment. So I had to kind of convince him, like, hey, maybe that's enough time. So maybe I'll need to let him go. So like the next, I don't know how long they were going to leave him in there, but so the next day I came and I'm like, hey, so what happened with, what's his name back here? Oh, he's home. He's done. We're going to do da-da-da-da-da-da. Made him show me the closet. So I could just kind of, okay, good, So you never know. Maybe they moved into a different closet so that the stupid American wouldn't be suspicious. I don't know.
So you never saw the guy again?
I did, yeah. But he would shy away from us because whenever it happened, I jumped all over him. I went crazy whenever whenever the rounds went off on him, and I had a couple dudes that wanted to get, because we all crapped our pants just and so. We went off from it, so he would kind of avoid us after that, keep his eyes down or whatever. But
that's what I was thinking. I was thinking probably whenever if you were being straight up about it, when you saw him in the closet, you're probably like, it's a bit much, but I'm all right with it.
It'll work, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't too disappointed.
Yeah, he's not getting, So I'm guessing it was an AK, right?
Yeah, AK-47. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, this would make for. This would make for a very funny scene of a movie where this guy gets out of his closet, his eyes are still, and they hand him his AK back, right? And tell him, all right, here you go. And he just walks out the door with his AK.
Back to work.
I'm guessing, do they have patrol units? Do they take their patrol units home at this time?
No. So they had police vehicles, but they didn't have a lot. I'm trying to remember how many police were assigned to this station. But this is right in the middle. The village was called Sarkani, the Sarkani district, which was a decently sized village outside of Asadabad, which is the capital of Kunar. So little bitty village, little bitty police station. Let's say there was 100 AMP there. I think they had 5 vehicles, but they don't patrol they don't have like a beat. You know, they go on like combat patrols. And like, you know, we load up on our big armored trucks. So they've got pickup trucks and they throw a bunch of dudes in the back and drive out to wherever they're going. And yeah.
No, okay.
Because the bad guys that they're really going after is not a meth head. They're going after like, you know, Taliban or AQ guys or whatever. You know, that's their.
What do? They just are they walking home and they get back to the base?
Yeah. So not all of them are from that area. So they go to one big academy, and I want to say it was in Kabul. I didn't know as much about the hierarchy of the Afghan National Police as I did the Iraqi police, but they would get assigned there, and they would try to assign as many of the junior policemen outside of the area that they were from as possible, so that they didn't have those like family ties that went back so far in the area. You know what I mean? So they would come in, they would stay there for their 5 or 6 days or however long they were scheduled to work, and then go home for 2 or 3. And then, you know, sometimes they never came back. You never knew why. Sometimes they got reassigned. You didn't know why. Sometimes they just never showed up back to work. You didn't know if they got killed or their Taliban cousin or whatever got a hold of them and either, you know, talked them onto their side or told them that he was going to kill their family if they came back to work, because that was reality for them.
So you guys were basically then to say that they were the police is almost, it's more along your line, your type of work then, right? More combat oriented.
Yeah, definitely.
They're not
like
out
they had
solving cases or anything like that. This is more of a trying to keep the peace, like on a big scale or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And we tried to teach them some basic policing tactics, so that they would have more of a presence with like the common, you know, citizen that wasn't involved in any of that stuff, so that they could, you know, provide a presence there. And we were getting there, but it takes a long time to kind of change that mentality. And so we went from whenever I got there when did I get there? I got there in April of 2010. They weren't even wearing their uniforms, and they were just sitting around the station all day, and they were collecting a paycheck, not really doing anything. So whenever we left, we would show up to the station sometimes, and if we weren't there on time, they were already out on patrol on their own. So they were at least going out by that point, and that was a huge victory for us.
Right.
You know, they weren't taking sworn statements or getting fingerprints off anything, but they were out there at least policing their area. And you could go find them. You know, if we showed up and they weren't there, and, you know, doctor or somebody told us like, yeah, they're patrolling this area, we'd go out there and they'd be patrolling. They'd be talking to people and doing their thing. So
was it common to hear a lot of gunshots around?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So is that the job basically to go to that area where the gunshots are, or is it
not necessarily? No. Just because it was so common. So every Afghan home was allowed to have an AK in it for self-defense. And really, if you spent your time trying to go to everywhere you heard gunshots, you'd never get anywhere. You'd just be running in circles. So, you know, like I said, it was an extremely hot area while we were there. We were in the thick of it for that whole year. So
yeah, it sounds almost stereotypical. I mean, the AKs, I'm sure, were very popular. Did you see, I don't know if you can even answer this kind of question, but did you see other kind of small arms over there that those guys had? I mean, would they have just like random?
Had a lot of old Russian stuff from whenever the Soviets were there. You know, let me make sure this didn't work. Yeah, they would, I mean, like sometimes they'd have these old pistols that looked like they were from the 20s and 30s. You couldn't even identify them, that they carried around for protection. There's, you know, like I said, a lot of old Soviet weapons. So the Soviets went in there and they tried to just duke it out and occupy this place and got their ass handed to them. So there's still a lot of that going on. And then you'd see some old American stuff from when the CIA was like arming the Mujahideen in their fight with the Soviets back then, you know, that had been passed around and sold and whatever else to, you know, to fall in the wrong hands. But nothing too crazy. I mean, they had the typical Soviet stuff. So recoilless rifles, which is actually like a rocket. And then the giant machine. God, I'm sitting here blanking on the podcast, and any of my Army buddies are going to laugh at me because I can't tell you what the big ass machine gun they used to shoot at us with all the time was, but it's because I'm blanking on it. And I'll get a million text messages after this. But But yeah, mainly AKs for the most part, and RPGs all over the place.
But they're not allowed, right?
What's that?
They're not allowed, the RPGs.
Shit.
I mean,
Did you guys confiscate that kind of? I mean, if you found something, like.
Oh, you mean like if a civilian had it? Yeah, we would take it from them. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But you didn't normally find them in a house, and
right.
if
but
you did,
you would just confiscate.
yeah, you would usually take it, and it would actually usually become the police's at that point for them to use. But because usually if they had it, there was usually a tie to somebody else.
Isn't
To
that
you know.
just the thing? They confiscated it and they're like, no, we're going to use this now.
Well, I would think. I mean, by and large, I would think if you found something like that in somebody's house, I would be thinking, well, these guys, this is they're keeping this for somebody. This is like an arms stash or something like that.
Yeah, we found a few, houses that were that they were stashing things for the bad guys. But
did you guys arrest those kind of people? I mean, was there a discipline for that kind of stuff? Or
yeah, so if it was something like that where it was like they were assisting, Taliban or AQ or whoever it was that was, the acronym of the day, then yeah, you would take them into custody, and then they would get handed over and go to Bagram to the prison and then be dealt with from there.
But not necessarily if they had an RPG, would they get?
No, like if it was one RPG, and they told you like, yeah, well, there was a fight here, 2 years ago, and you guys killed these dudes, and and we found this on the ground after you left, and we kept it for our house. Like, that's probably a legit story. We're just going to take it from them. You know what I mean?
Shoot it off in your house and kill everybody back.
Yeah.
Just from some of the videos I've seen of those guys,
oh, dude.
It's just like they don't need that.
No training whatsoever.
Well, I mean, they're liable to. Well, in American society, you can say what you want to about the direction we're headed in, but I mean, by and large, we're kind of a gun culture in America, so a lot of people know when you pick something up, don't. Well, I don't know, I say that.
Yeah.
People in my area don't be, pointing at people and don't pull the trigger on it or whatever. But those videos I see of those guys, and I don't know if it's common or not, but they seem really unfamiliar with some of the things that they're using and doing over there. So.
Well, so an RPG, just like that. So we have it's called an AT-4. It's an anti-tank rocket, and it shoots out of a tube, very similar. The real dangerous part of that to your buddies is what's called the back blast.
Mm-hmm.
So the back of that thing, you always see it. I mean, it will, just decimate everybody behind you. Well, if you don't know that, and I've seen it happen, I've seen bad guys roll up, try to shoot one at a checkpoint, and they just hold the RPG, like the tip of it, out the window and smoke everybody inside the truck because the back blast. And there's videos of that all over the internet. Like they kill everybody inside because that explosion is just as bad as the other one.
Right.
Like we have a procedure before we fire ours it's called, back blast area clear, and you yell it and you look and make sure that the back blast area is clear so that you don't, Ben's back there smoking a cigarette and gets,
right.
killed at the OP because he was standing behind you while you shot off the rocket,
And see, but in some ways, I maybe wouldn't want to educate those guys because they're helping the cause by
yeah,
and eliminate the threat.
Yeah,
themselves.
Yeah, you're like, well, we're not going to do any RPG training. We need these guys to keep doing what they're doing with it. So
yeah,
that is insane. Well, now, so I hate to group it all together because I have read a lot about it and I know that there's a difference or whatever, but so your experiences then in Afghanistan versus Iraq, totally different.
Yeah, 100% different. Yeah.
Okay. Because Iraq's a lot more developed country than Afghanistan, correct?
Yeah, so Iraq was, just as advanced as any other Western or as a Western nation before all the sanctions and things from the Gulf War happened. That kind of decimated their economy, but they had, all the vehicles and, the infrastructure and things that you could want, just not all of it worked. But where I was in Afghanistan was, the complete opposite of that. Like I said, there's no power grid whatsoever. A few of them might have had a gas generator, like a few, but it wasn't used to power a TV. You know what I mean? And they still, they wear that traditional, I guess you would call it Arab clothing. They walk around and they climb those mountains, wearing boots, and they'll dust you running up a mountain in a pair of leather sandals that, are a half an inch thick on their best day on the bottom. And because that's just how they live. That's what they do day to day. Most of them, a lot of them couldn't read because they were never taught, because it's not important. They needed to know how to farm or how to fight or how to do, whatever it was. So yeah, completely different experience. Now, from what I'm told, so I've been all over Iraq. I've been to all the major cities. So I know that whole country pretty well, but Afghanistan, I was really centered in Kunar. From what I'm told, Kabul is very westernized with technology and infrastructure and things, but I don't have any experience of it. I never saw it. So
But Kunar's like kind of the worst of the worst over there, isn't it?
Kunar is, Kunar's on the Pak border, and it's about as bad. There's a couple other places that are on the same level as Kunar, but it's definitely up there. And those other areas that you hear about mostly are like Kunar's neighbors. So they're all, they're just separated by an imaginary border, like Oklahoma and Texas or whatever. So,
Well, and the topography, I would assume, that I've always heard geographically, of course, it's a lot different than Vietnam, but I mean, just the fact that they've mastered the elements there as far as and those kind of things like that. So you're at a huge disadvantage. And because of that. And I think that's why I read a thing about the reason why they beat the Russians so handily, even though the Russians had all of this technology and all these war vehicles and all these things they could take in there, they beat them so easily because, dude, they are on foot. They're used to being on foot. They're used to hiding to above tree line. I didn't realize that until the war stuff started happening. Afghanistan, I always think of the desert. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm thinking of Iraq and all these countries is like this big flat sandy desert, and instead, you see these pictures and it looks like Utah or northern Colorado, or you know what I mean? It's real steep mountains, a lot of snow capped, yada yada yada, evergreens, and then above tree line it's barren, and these people live in that crap. And you roll in there with a tank. Well, good luck. Because
it ain't gonna work.
Down to you think about it on that level. That would be tough, man. I'm surprised we have had as much success as we have. Tenacity would be the only thing you could say. Just keep on pushing at them would be the only way you could get anything done over, I'm sure. And on your end of it, though, dealing with the people, did the guys that you were training from what would I say, like the Afghanis or whatever, you were training the police force there too, right?
Yep.
Right. Were those guys, was there any respect from people that, like the general population, did they respect the authority of these guys, or did they get, because they run around with you guys, was there something that was like, oh, those guys are, they run around with the Americans, we don't care what they do?
No, they did, but they weren't. So, if you got some big situation happening in your neighborhood, whenever the police show up, for the most part, Americans know, okay, all right, the police just showed up. We got to listen to what they're going to say. And, this is now their show. When the police show up there, it's not like everyone just stops what's going on. When the elders show up, everyone shuts up to include the police and listen to what the elders have to say. So these old men come walking in and, all right, so what happened? This, and this. Okay. And the police want to do this. And they kind of decide if the police are going to do that or not.
Wow. Seeing that there you go. There's another layer of making your job more difficult to me.
Oh man. Yep. And for the most part, the elders didn't really want to be friends with us, not because they disliked us or anything, but they're worried about just their people, and just, so us getting in good with them wasn't really a thing that we could do. We met with them and we knew them, and we would invite them. We would try to get the Afghan police to invite them to the station for meetings and things where we could discuss, different issues going on or whatever. And they would show up and do those things, but they were not going to partner with us by any means. And
That
which I
would,
get, I guess.
oh man, you can imagine. I can just imagine the things you could have gotten done if they would have been
Hmm.
receptive. I mean, but you're talking about I mean, if you could do that, that would be a huge culture shift in that country. And
Yeah.
I'm sure, maybe over time something like that could be done if people are still working at it. But I mean, on your end of it, you're specific to me. I mean, like I said, I'm just kind of singing the praises of guys like yourself to go in there, and you got to try. I mean, you got to do what you can with those dudes. So, especially having your hands tied on that level where it's you go, well, in this instance, we're not the top authority. We can only do
Yep.
it. That's crazy, man. I mean, it's so far from what we know here. It's hard to imagine. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost like there's no law. I mean, when there's tribal law, then it's like up to the guy to decide.
What kind of food were you eating at this time?
So we had, our
Are you-
Army cooks and contractors there. So we had a chow hall on our little base, and it's pretty good food. But yeah, so we would do missions. We'd go out. It seemed like they were always scheduled to just go 72 hours, but they always went, like a week or 10 days, of course, where all you're eating was MREs. And then I ate a lot of Afghan food. I loved Afghan food out on the economy, but I got sick a couple times. They don't have the standards of, preparation that we do always. But
What was your favorite Afghan food?
So they have Ramadan where they do their fasting and all that. Their big, holy holiday. And at the end of it is this celebration called Eid. And I'm hoping that I'm remembering all this accurately. Like I said, it's been almost 10 years now. But it's a 3-day celebration at the end of Ramadan where they instead of fasting, they feast and they celebrate and all this. So during Ramadan, it was really tough on those Afghan police because even though, they basically have an exemption from fasting because they're law enforcement or military or whatever. It's kind of written in their deal that they can eat because it's necessary. A lot of them wouldn't. And so we would do a lot of patrols at night because they could eat when the sun wasn't up. But for the most part, they were kind of diminished for about 40 days. So, excuse me, I had my wife send me a bunch of cash for Eid, and we went to their market, and I bought a bunch of food, and I bought a goat, and so I gave the police money, and they went and got it. But bought a goat, bunch of food, bunch of drinks, the whole thing, and brought it back to the Afghan police station, and they sacrificed the goat and cooked it up like same day fresh goat, did the whole thing. I say sacrifice. I mean, they have like they I can't remember what it's called whenever the way that they prepare. Oh, halal. So the way that they prepare things it's like a halal meal. I mean, there's no pork in it, and they prepare it properly and pray over it properly and all those things. And they prepared all of it, and I paid for it. And I'm, in the States, for as many people as I fed, it probably would have cost me $1,500. I think I spent $120 or something.
Wow.
On this, but so anyway, same day goat with some fresh vegetables out of their garden, and then bread that one of their wives made in the house that was where it was at, man. That was really good.
So then I'm sure goat being one of their main staples, as far as what they eat, what kind of did they have over there?
They had some just pretty common vegetables, tomatoes, like cucumber, zucchini, and then we called it lettuce, but it was more like a spinach, but it wasn't quite spinach kind of thing, just like a leaf dill. And then just a little bit of spices, but it was all fresh. Like I said, like we always joked around as same day goat, but
So did they, any of your the Iraqi or Afghan people that you're around, did they like American food that you guys were?
They're real cautious of it because they know that like we eat pork and things like that. They're very cautious of what they will eat that we bring them. So like we always gave kids candy and stuff. But so Doctor, a couple of times we brought him onto our base and tried to get him to eat with us. And we would even take him and show him like, hey, there's no pork back here. We told him you're coming. One of the contractors that cooked in our chow hall, was Muslim, and he would talk to him, be like, yes, I made, and tell him that he made it properly or whatever. And doctor just wasn't going to risk it, but he loved ice cream. So we would just get ice cream and sit down and eat and meet, so they were just super cautious of it. But yeah, they love candy, like the kids and stuff. That was really the only way to get kids to come and talk to you. You just load yourself down with candy and they just swarm you. You hand it out. And
you said you had to have the Afghanistan guys go buy the stuff for you. And would they sell it to you individually, or
they would have? But like, I would have been at risk walking into the market and then walking out with a bunch of groceries. Like, I can't really defend myself, so we would send them to go do it for us. Yeah, I did 2 years in Iraq, and then there was a little bit of a gap after I was a drill sergeant. I went to Afghanistan. Pretty much immediately. So I came back from Afghanistan, and I was at Fort Hood. And so if you remember the Fort Hood shooter in 2009, Nidal Hasan, so all of his pretrial stuff was going on, and I got moved to what was called the SRT, our Special Reaction Team, which is like the SWAT team. And we got put in charge of basically doing all of his security for all of his pretrial stuff. So I wound up spending like 9 months transporting this dude from the Bell County Jail in Belton, Texas, right outside of Temple, back to Fort Hood for all of his pretrial meetings or meetings with his attorneys or whatever he needed, and back, while also like training and certifying this new team. And then I would have been there through all of his trial, except I got put on recruiting orders and wound up in McAllister. So I was in McAllister. When did I get there? July of 12. So just barely a year after getting out of Afghanistan.
good grief.
Any stories with that guy when you
With Hasan? Not a ton. We didn't really deal with him much. He had a real kind of big time attorney at the time, and that didn't really like us being around, but we didn't care. So we didn't have a whole lot to do with him, except, just physically moving him. So we would alternate. We had to do training with the Secret Service on moving him, because we had to alternate between flying him via helicopter, which was the safest, which we liked the best, but they weren't always available. So we would have to literally drive him from like I said, the Bell County Jail is about a 25-minute drive, and you wind up driving him through neighborhoods and things. Well, you're also driving him right back to the place where he committed the crime. So there's a lot of people that hate him. So the wrong person gets wind of it. So we had to protect him. So we did some Secret Service training. So we would move him, but he was in a van. He was locked down in a wheelchair. And then whenever we flew him, we would just secure him to a gurney. And then he would be like on a stretcher. And then we would secure him down in the helicopter. So that was really the most interaction we'd have with him. He wouldn't really say much. We wouldn't say much to him. The civilians that were on my team actually responded to the shooting, and were searching for him during the shooting and things. So,
wow.
Had he said anything, it could have turned bad for him. I wasn't there yet. I was still a drill sergeant whenever the shooting happened, but I was like 60 days away from moving there whenever it happened.
Wow. I want to talk a little bit about you being a drill sergeant.
Okay.
I asked you a couple of questions, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago about it.
Yeah.
About practicing and becoming one, and how it all goes down, and you being a nice guy that you are. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to imagine that you've done what you've done, overseas, and been through it all. And we know some guys that's done, a lot of stuff, and they're not so nice as you are. And so, but you being a drill sergeant, I don't know any drill sergeants. I've never met. I don't even think I've ever even met a drill sergeant. So you being a drill sergeant, and as nice as you are, how did it all go down?
So my wife thinks that I'm like, I don't know, I guess bipolar would be the word. I don't know. Cause I can flip a switch, especially in work mode, if I have to. But being a drill sergeant, like all the screaming and yelling and things that you see, it's a very, very minuscule part of what a drill sergeant does. Drill sergeants and drill instructors and, whatever the other branches call them, are like expert teachers. We're taking somebody that most of the time knows absolutely nothing about the military, how we do things, and in a very short window, turning them into soldiers. And whenever I was a drill sergeant, a lot of these kids within, 2, 3, 4 months were in Iraq or in Afghanistan. So it's serious business, and that's the way you have to do it. And the stress that we induce. So yeah, at first, you can Google all the videos or YouTube them or whatever, people just screaming, and there's pictures. I'll send you a picture. I'll find it, where I'm just going to town on somebody screaming and going berserk and all that. And it's all about inducing stress. And at the beginning, you're trying to induce so much stress that they can't function. And you start stripping away their individuality at that point. Well, then as you go along, you induce the stress again, but you start showing them how to deal with it to where it doesn't matter. Because what you want to be able to do is cut out all the noise and still take care of what they have to do. And the stress isn't personal. So it's not, so if Ben's one of the, the new soldiers getting off the bus, I'm not mad at Ben for joining the Army. It's the stress is me getting Ben to achieve the standard of the task, whatever that task is. And that's where you have to, it doesn't feel that way. Like whenever I was brand new and I was just getting, the hell smoked out of me, it feels very personal. Yeah, but it's not, it's getting, you have to change the way that somebody thinks and the way that they view things and the way that they view stress. And you have to ratchet it up. And it's fun at first, I guess, because you've seen it in the movies, you remember it happening to you and yada, yada, yada. But after that, it's a job, and it's an exhausting job. I mean, you do that for 2 years, and it's 24 months, just nonstop. Most of the time, 7 days a week. The days are usually 18, 19-hour days. It's rough.
Well,
it's
you're
hard.
getting ready for it, and it's kind of you're the first guy or the first person that it's kind of on you, I would think, right?
Yeah. Well, and so I was training MP soldiers, and and sure enough, as soon as I'm done being a drill sergeant, I get to Fort Hood and get told I'm going to Afghanistan, and I meet my squad that I'm taking to Afghanistan, and 2 of the kids in the squad, I was their drill sergeant.
Really?
So it's like, shit, I hope I was good. Like I hope they learned something.
Did they joke around about it at all?
Later on, they did. They didn't know kind of how to react at first, but once they figure out that you're a human,
right.
Yeah, it's
they kind of probably treated you as you were still their drill sergeant, right?
yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, I got called drill sergeant a lot for a long time after I was a drill sergeant. So. But yeah, it's a wild thing. You essentially go, so drill sergeant school, you go back through basic training again, and through all the phases and the same training iterations. But instead of like learning how to march, you learn how to teach people how to march. And instead of rappelling off the tower, you learn how to teach them how to tie their seat. It's called a Swiss seat, and then how to actually safely rappel down the tower and how to shoot. You learn teaching someone marksmanship that has no idea how to even hold a gun or a rifle is that is an art form. And so you have to learn how to teach those things. So I essentially went through basic training again to learn how to do it. And that's the way they set it up.
Never really thought about it. That'd be, I'm sure they've developed techniques for you guys to expedite that kind of training. Because like you said, you have a short window to go from I've never held a gun to accurately shooting the weapon and being in a stress situation. So, and you've only got so much time, so you got to cut the shit.
From never held a gun to soldier in Iraq,
Because it would take me a while. I'd be like, okay, man, look here. You hold this does this. It would take me a long time, so I'm sure they.
And it's not treated that way, right? I mean, you're not there to be like their dad. You're there to hammer.
And I mean, but you have to be able to go from that authoritarian, drill sergeant, stereotypical drill sergeant, to being a teacher, but being professional at all times. You never get to pat one on the back and tell them it's okay, because it's not okay. And it's not like we don't expect people to be perfect, but we can't let them be okay with failure, because if they fail, something on the battlefield, that could be lethal to themselves or someone else. Yeah. So it's all purpose driven,
Hell yeah.
It's fun too. I loved that job. It was exhausting. Whenever it was done, I was really glad it was done, but
doing it.
What's that?
You had fun while doing it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I'm still really good friends with a lot of the guys that I was drill sergeants with. I still work with some of them. And so, yeah, it was cool. It's very rewarding. You get a lot of instant reward feedback. Some kid, you've never seen something so funny as a kid that can't march, you know, and like whenever you walk, do you think about swinging your arms? And that whenever your left foot's forward, your right hand goes forward? You don't, do you?
Right.
But until you start marching, now all of a sudden people can't do that. And their right arm's going forward with their right leg and their left. And, you know, and then you take that kid, and then on graduation day, his mom's there crying, and you've got him doing all kinds of different marching movements and looking all cool. And so it's a cool job.
Tell me a funny story.
You want me to tell you a funny story? All right.
Yeah, I want to know if you've ever cracked, you know, but.
Oh, yeah. So I'm sure that I cracked in front of them a little bit. I naturally love to joke around, and I can hurl a funny insult at somebody, or, you know, to cut somebody down in no time. And sometimes it's just too good. And so you'll crack a little bit, but you start to kind of know whenever it's going to happen. So you'll walk off, and like your buddy will know that what you're doing. And so he'll take over for a minute so that you can get out of the room. But so we had a kid, and I'm not going to say his name. I highly doubt that he listens to the I Don't Drink Coffee podcast, but he was a college linebacker. It was my very first cycle. He showed up, and he's about 6'4", probably 255 whenever he showed up, with single-digit body fat on him. And figure out that he's in between his sophomore and junior year of college. He's a linebacker, like a D3 school or something, just a hell of an athlete. And he joined the Army to help finish paying for school, whatever his scholarship didn't pay for. And so the joke in the Army is that there's smart Rangers and there's strong Rangers. So the smart ones can think through a problem, but you need some strong Rangers sometimes to like make a hole in the wall, right? Or to carry all the heavy shit. And this kid was a strong Ranger for sure. And he wasn't going to college on an education scholarship. He was there because he was an athlete, you know. And but he, you know, just because of how scary looking he was kind of my enforcer in the platoon. So if some kid just wouldn't get right, I could go tell him, be like, hey, you better get, you know, Private so-and-so in line, or it's going to be a bad day for the whole platoon. No problems, drill sergeant, I'll take care of it. Wouldn't have to worry. I'm sure he whooped some kid's ass at some point. But anyways, I figured out that this kid loved macaroni salad. Loved it. And if it was in the chow hall, and I knew it was going to be in the chow hall that night, I could get him to motivate that platoon. I wouldn't even have to say anything to him, like, hey, so, you know, if we get 90% of the people qualify on the first time today, right? We would call 90% first time go. You can have macaroni salad tonight. Yes, drill sergeant, I'll take care of it. He'd run off. Sure as shit, like 100% first time go. Because he's probably back there just telling them all the bad shit he's going to do to them. But anyways, told you all that to tell you this. We're doing Warrior Tower, which is where you got to climb up, you know, and it's several, I think it's 40 feet or something. And for people like me that are scared of heights, that's really high. And turns out this kid is scared to death of heights. And so we're up there and we're kicking kids off the tower. So we wear like a harness that straps us in so that we can lean out over the edge of this tower and talk them down the tower while they're rappelling. And but while they're on top, they're only wearing this seat that we have them tie that they wind up clipping into the rope on. So at the top, for safety, they have to crawl like on all fours until they get up and we hook them into the rope so that they're safe. You know, because if not, you get a bunch of kids running around and they're stressed out. Somebody's going to fall and it's going to be a mess. And we're up there, and this giant kid, and you can just see he is terrified. I mean, his eyes are this big and he's shaking. And it was kind of cold out, but it wasn't that cold, you know. And he's getting close to us, and my buddy Evans is next to me, and he just starts jacking with him, just because, you know, we're bored. We've been kicking 200 kids off this tower all day long, and, you know, it's getting old. He kind of starts jacking with him a little bit, just asking him questions, and he won't talk, like he won't answer. He's just sitting there and he's shaking and this thing. And then all of a sudden he just this big kid just lets out this like whimper, just what the, and Evans goes off, what the fuck is wrong with you? And he looks down, and this kid is pissed all over himself.
Oh my God.
I mean, everywhere. There's a puddle, and I'm like, son of a bitch. Well, now we're stuck between, like, do we humiliate him? Because you never want to humiliate somebody, right? You never want anything to be personal. And so we're like, shit, we got to get, so I'm like, hey man, undo your canteen, pour some water so nobody else crawls through your piss. Let's get this over with. So Evans is over here. He sees it like, shit. Well, my buddy Roll's house is on the other side, and he's retired out of the Army now, so I can kind of call him out a little bit. But so this poor kid, of course, he doesn't come to me or Evans whenever it's his turn. He's got to go to Roll's house. So Roll's house is the opposite of this kid. He's 5'4", 140 pounds on his heaviest day. Just little bitty dude, but just a firecracker. The kid walks up. He's got a giant wet spot on his pants. God damn it. Did you fucking piss your pants? And just twists off on him for 5 or 6 minutes. This poor giant kid's up there just crying, upset because he pissed all over himself. And Evans and I are stuck between like being mortified that, the kid's getting humiliated and laughing our ass off and the whole deal. Finally hook his big ass up, kick him off the tower, and he goes down. And then I think some private tried to say something at some point to him about it and got his ass whooped in the barracks because we got like a falling in the shower kind of story or something from some kid with a black eye one night.
This guy lost his credibility after that.
I think he went and got it back, but he lost so much weight that whenever he graduated, like 3 or 4 weeks later, I actually got a phone call in our office from like his linebacker coach at whatever university it was. He's like, I sent you a linebacker and you sent a wide receiver back to me because the kid lost all of his muscle mass, from all the running and everything. But
You're not allowed to weight train, right?
No. So our fitness test is changing right now, and there's actually some weight training in our fitness test, so that's going to have to change. But no, traditionally it's all like calisthenics and a lot of running, and and this kid, I'm sure, never ran more than a 40-yard dash in his life before he came to the Army, but he could bench press and squat and deadlift a truck. And, he was a good kid. He was a good soldier. I'm sure he had a successful career, but he pissed himself on Warrior Tower, man.
You never gave him hell about it?
No, not like I said. I never wanted anything to be like actually personal.
And the other guy took care of that for you anyways, didn't he?
Yeah.
He said everything you wanted to say.
Yeah, like I would, especially later on in the cycles, I would, maybe crack a joke about somebody, but very obviously not being serious. But I never wanted them to think that there was anything personal between us at all, especially negatively, So no, I would have to stay away from it. But
so do you ever, like if you're in a guy's face, or doing your drill sergeant type thing, and did you ever, start laughing from an answer that the guy gave you? Or
I don't know if I ever laughed like right in their face, but I've been like actually rendered speechless by stuff, and I'm trying to think of something specific. But I mean, just you start asking some kid, you give him some Full Metal Jacket, what's your major malfunction or whatever, and going off, and he'd give you some answer about, his mom drank while she was pregnant with him or something, and you just. Okay, I guess that explains it. We'll just carry on.
Serious, right? He would say something serious that was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those kids they're
joking around. They were being.
Yeah.
Did any of them give you a sarcastic answer back?
A few did, yeah. So you'd get some that would try to tough guy you. They thought they had it figured out and didn't think that you could ratchet the heat up enough on them to make their life miserable. They think they're tough and they're gonna withstand anything. But I mean, I'll just turn the stove on hotter and hotter and hotter until it's just too hot for the chicken to keep dancing, and they all, you eventually get all of them. Everybody's got a chink in their armor,
Right.
But the beauty of that too would be when you got these, he's in with a group of people. So if he screws it up, you just make it worse for everybody. And then
exactly,
everybody's going to be like, stop.
Yep. Yep. Prison rules go into effect at some point. Like it's, they're gonna straighten them up. And we never had anything too bad, but yeah, like I said, there were several times some kid would have a knot on his head or something. What happened? I slipped in the shower, drill sergeant. You sure somebody didn't whip your ass? I'm sure. I slipped in the shower. He'd have some dudes behind him like, he slipped in the shower. Don't. All right, I'm not gonna ask any more questions. But the kid didn't give you any more problems after that, Yeah, so what you and I were talking about, so if you ever meet a drill sergeant, they can do what's called the preamble, because the way that we teach marching, it's very regimented in the way that you do it. And there's a thing before you teach every single movement, and it's all phased throughout basic training and the whole deal, but they can always still do the preamble and at least do the position of attention. And whenever you listen to it, it sounds like gibberish until you like break it down what it actually is. and it's all about, mystique. And you do a lot to like make it, especially in front of the new soldiers, to make drill sergeants, seem larger than life in the way that they do things. So whenever you pitch a module, so I'll do the preamble to the position of attention, and hopefully I don't screw it up and embarrass myself. But so the way you would start is drill sergeant just marches out. So think some dude, uniform, sharp as hell, with the campaign hat on, marches out, won't crack a smile, comes out, marches to the center of the formation, and is at the position of attention, and just rattles off. So the next movement that I'll name, explain, have demonstrated, and which you will conduct practical work on, is the position of attention. The position of attention is the key position for all stationary, facing, and marching movements. The commands for this position are fall in and attention. Fall in is a combined command. Attention is a two-part command when preceded by a preparatory command such as squad, platoon, or demonstrator. When given, these commands are as follows: fall in, demonstrator, attention, and then he'll say demonstrator, post, and this other drill sergeant will come running out and just stop and kind of stand like a scarecrow while the drill sergeant goes through. And I can't do it now in the order that we used to, but starts at the heels of your feet and tells you to put them together with the toes pointed out at a 45-degree angle with the weight of the body, waist resting evenly on the heels and balls of both feet. The legs are straight with the knees not locked. The hips are centered and facing forward. I can't remember how it all goes, but every position is like that. So whenever you see like a drill sergeant, that's like the first time a private's like, holy shit, this guy is a psychopath. This is all he does. Like he goes home at night and talks about this stuff. But in drill sergeant school, you have to pitch. It's called pitching. So whenever your first week there, you have to pitch the top three, which is the position of attention, rest positions at the halt, which is like at ease, stand at ease, and parade rest, which is whenever you see guys standing with their hand behind their back, but it's still a pretty rigid position, and then the hand salute. And you have to pitch all three of those back to back in front of your entire class perfectly while a drill sergeant stands there. It's a drill sergeant leader, so a guy that's been a drill sergeant for over 2 years and is now teaching drill sergeants, stands there with it in front of him on a clipboard, marking each word that you get wrong and each time that you said something wrong or messed something up, and you're only allowed, so many screw ups or whatever. So anyways, that's what I was talking about whenever you and I were messaging back and forth. It's just somehow we got onto it about memorization or something. I can't remember. And I was like, oh yeah, dude, I can still pitch. I mean, I went to drill sergeant school from August to October of 2007, and I can still pitch like that, the preamble at least. And I could probably, if I looked up the module, I could pitch the position of attention probably inside of, if I looked at it long enough, I could do it pretty well inside of 5 or 6 minutes.
Because you've done it how many times?
A million times, yeah. And then practicing it, I mean, I used to stand in front of the drill sergeant school before we would get, because you'd have to pitch different modules every week. I mean, I'd be in my barracks room at drill sergeant school staring in the mirror, just pitching this module over and over and over and over and over. And during breaks in class at drill sergeant school, you just see students looking in their book, memorizing modules, just, one right after another for 10 weeks. So I was born just outside of Amarillo in a town called Hereford. And if you hear Hereford and think of a Hereford cow, that's all that's in Hereford, Texas. It's just giant feedlots. And that's where my dad, his whole family was raised, where my mom was raised. But like shortly thereafter, they moved to Amarillo, which is like 35 minutes away. And I lived there through the 4th grade. Yeah. And then my mom got a job in San Antonio. So I moved with her and my stepdad down there for a year, maybe a little bit more than a year. And in that, and my dad wasn't a police officer yet. He was working in Amarillo he worked for animal control, he was a dog catcher or whatever. And then he moved to Dallas. He got a job working. His family ran a home health business for a long time. And about that time, right before the 6th grade, I moved in with my dad. And we were in Dallas through about halfway through my 9th grade year. And he had always wanted to be a cop. And then he finally he had gotten sick of what he was doing. He hated working in an office, and finally just, started applying everywhere. He always wanted to move back to Amarillo, and he got hired. So we moved back, and he's been doing it ever since. He was a patrolman he's a hell of a cop too. But he was a patrolman for a long time, and then he worked narcotics for several years. And then he was on a Homeland Security task force. Man, I don't know how long he was on that. And then now he's back working, kind of in that narcotics realm again.
So he's still doing it.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so my parents are very young. So I'm 36. My dad will turn 53 this year, and my mom just turned 55. So I have very, very young parents. They were very young whenever I was born. So, but yeah, he's out there still getting after it all the time.
He's in Amarillo?
Yeah. And if you knew him, if you knew him, in his real life, and then I told you that he was a narcotics officer, you wouldn't believe it. Like it's a completely so out of character for him. Just
it's kind of the same way with you. It's most people that has been where you've been. It just seems like they have a different type of personality, and that's just my experience. Especially you've been in the military for your whole adult life.
Yeah, well, half my life, really. Like, so I'm 36, and I'll hit my 18th year in the military this year. So I've spent literally half my life in the Army. Yeah,
it's crazy, man.
Yeah,
but you can tell there's a few things to me that are giveaways. Like if in my experience, a lot of military guys always have a watch on.
Oh yeah. He definitely.
Oh
does.
yeah, naked without a watch.
Black watch at all times. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that's from. I don't know where that, if it's a being on time thing or whatever. I don't know where that comes from. It's
where does that come from?
So yeah, so it comes from so I never wore a watch till I joined the Army, but like you don't want to be late to anything. Being late is a cardinal sin for us. So and also like there's always a hit time. You've always got to something's always coming up that you can't be late for. So I have like an obsession. If I don't know what time it is, if I'm working out, I don't have my watch or something, and I don't know what time it is, like I can't concentrate on what I'm doing. I have to know what time of day it is. Like I'm never that dude like, yeah, I just looked up at the clock and it was 4 hours later than I thought it was. Like, no, I knew exactly what time it was the whole time I was doing it.
So you would say you and your dad have the same personality basically, or?
Whenever it comes to work stuff, yeah.
I mean, is he pretty, like you said earlier, you wouldn't really know that he was in narcotics. Does he got a pretty easygoing type personality? And
in real life, yeah, but at work, he's very rigid, very by the book, really tough and hard. Like he doesn't, he's not a cop that's going to cut you many breaks, but he's that way with everyone. You know what I mean? I mean, he's fair across the board. But like, you take my 2 kids, and then my sister just had a baby this week, and you see him like with his grandkids. That dude, there's no way he buys crack or whatever for like it ain't happening. And then, but my wife says the same thing at work. Like whenever, for me, like if she sees me dealing with people at work, like it's not the same person. And like people that I'm friends with at work, they see me outside of work with my family and stuff, and they're, wow, you're really different. Like I love kids. I love playing with kids.
Mm-hmm.
I always played with Ben's kids whenever I was there, and just a big. But like at work, I have a good time at work. I'm not like deathly serious, and I don't just walk up and down the hall cussing people out. But I don't have a whole lot of time for BS at work. I'm pretty, and I'm to the point. I'm very blunt with people, especially at work. But I try to not do that because it kind of sucks whenever you're to have that on all the time.
Right.
I like hanging out, having a good time.
Yeah.
Well, I could see how. I mean, for anyone, it would be it'd be hard to be relaxed in the positions that you, just from what you've told me so far, the things you're doing. I mean, be brief. To me, in a military setting, it would be hard to ever relax. I don't know if that's a thing or not. I've never,
Yeah, I mean, we have a good time, especially whenever it's, like guys that are my same rank, my friends, my peer group or whatever. And whenever it's just us, we sit around and cut up and tell jokes or whatever. But I mean, we're in a serious business. So it takes a pretty serious mindset while you're at work. Even the mundane things that we do are serious. They have a serious, reason for being done. So I guess it kind of forces it.
Yeah. Well,
and I probably get that from my dad, I would think.
When I played football, that locker room mentality, sure, you're always joking, but you're always, there's always this underlying masculinity to everything, I'm sure that kind of goes along with what we're talking about. I mean, you don't want to give up too much room to anybody. You don't want anybody to get anything over on you. So you got to kind of be on guard just a little bit or whatever.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I walked right out of a high school locker room into the Army. So and it was the same way. So
did you play football in high school?
Yeah, I played football. I played baseball right up until high school and for a little bit in high school. I wish I'd have kept playing baseball, but I had a bad experience with a coach, and instead of, you know, making that right and sticking with it, I kind of let it go and stayed in football. But yeah, I played at Amarillo High, which has a real storied history. Like a couple of coaches for University of Texas coached at Amarillo High back in the day, like in the 50s. My senior year, we broke the record for like most consecutive playoff appearances. We weren't that good. We just weren't in that good of a district my senior year. But we played against I played against some superstars. Cedric Benson, he just died, like a year ago,
Yep.
but played at the University of Texas there. So we played against him. What's that?
Motorcycle race? Did he die on a motorcycle?
Yeah, he did in Austin. Yeah, I played against him in high school. Roy Williams, the wide receiver, that was with the Lions and then the Cowboys for a while. Whenever I lived in Dallas, I went to a school, it's called Duncanville. And so if you saw, they've been to the state championship the last 2 years. They won one my freshman year, but the last 2 years they've been, not this season that just ended, but the season before, they lost on that Hail Mary in the 5A state championship game in Cowboy Stadium, like on the last play. That was Duncanville. So there I played with I don't know how many of those kids went D1. They must have had probably 10 from my class that I grew up with through junior high that went and played D1 football. And then a lot of junior college players and things like that. A couple that I played with in Amarillo went and played. So I was around some stellar athletes growing up. And I was a decent high school player, I guess, nothing special. But it was my life. That's all I cared about. What's that?
What did you play?
I was a linebacker, and then my last 2 years, we ran kind of a weird defense, and we had this hybrid position that they called an anchor, but it was kind of a hybrid between a defensive tackle and a linebacker, depending on, what was going on, and I got moved to it. And I just like to hit people. So my high school coach, my position coach, was one of he probably got me more ready for the Army than anybody. I mean, that you want to talk about a dude that just, if it was anything less than perfect, he wasn't going to have it. But a great man. I'm still in touch with to this day.
Really?
But yeah, I credit him a lot with me being successful in the Army, because the dude did not mess around. I mean, he was nose to the grindstone, But
That's great.
Oh, and we've on several times in life and on the podcast, I draw a lot of similarities from sports that translate over into life, like that thing. That's why I think it's a shame whenever kids don't play sports just for, preparation for life or whatever you want to say.
I feel like kids need somebody that cares about them, but that isn't gonna. So I'm always going to kind of side with my kids. I'm always going to try to help them along and do things for them. But I think every kid needs an authority figure that cares for them, but that doesn't care about what the excuse is, doesn't care why you think you can't do it. Like, no, you're going to go back to work at it. You're going to, like, I think every kid, it's very character building to have that. Like, I don't care that you don't feel good. I don't care that your girlfriend broke up with you today. I don't care. You're going to get this done because the world doesn't care,
Where a good coach comes in.
Yep, absolutely.
Life lessons and the sport itself.
Yeah. Yeah, kids need to lose, they need to get their heart broke at something that they, that's unfair. They need to work harder than the other guy and have that guy beat them because, he hit the shot or he did whatever. You need that.
Yeah, I don't ever remember winning anything and learning from it. There's always that aspect that I'm learning.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I'm right there with you, man. I mean, you want to make it good for your kids, and as a parent, you want them to have a good life and, a decently easy life, but also at the same time, we talk about it a lot, and Ben and I do for sure, but you want them to lose. You want them to, not that you want something bad for them, but I mean, that's where they become people, because there's going to be plenty of things to kick your ass whenever you get out there doing it on your own. So, I mean, you kind of need that. It's important. You don't want to see them lose. I love to see my kids win, but they damn sure get better when they lose. I know that.
Yeah. I have to stop myself. Seems like almost daily of fighting some battle for my kids or something, just because I want, I want everything to go. And my wife half the time is gonna be like, "Hey, why don't you just shut up and let them work it out?" Like, no, I'll call that teacher. I'll call her, or I'll go up there. I'll do it. She's got to stop. Probably because I have girls too. Like, I think if I had boys, I'd be a lot harder on them. But yeah, it's rough, man.
If I was like you're in Germany now, I would especially, and I'm sure there's, you guys probably have stuff, I'm assuming on base type.
Yeah. My kids go to like American schools on a base, American teachers, the whole thing. So it's actually really, really good schools.
Are they learning German?
My oldest, Lizzie is going to be a freshman next year. She's in the 8th grade. She's taking German. And then my youngest starts junior high next year, but I don't know if she'll take any German. So we've got to think about, we're going to move. So my oldest doing that, she gets all the high school credit done because she'll have taken 3 years. But if my youngest takes German next year and then her next school doesn't offer German, she just wasted a year. So we gotta have to look at things whenever they start. We got to plan ahead a little bit because they've only got one school year left after this one.
You give her
before
a
we move
good
again.
start, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but, I mean, I don't know. She may wind up taking Spanish just because what
Right.
school doesn't teach Spanish, So, but, yeah, my oldest will be done. She's doing actually like high school level German right now. But luckily they both took after their mom, and they're pretty smart.
So you guys liking it over there?
Yeah, it's fun, man. We've traveled a ton. We just went to, so right now we're dodging the coronavirus, so we're not traveling anywhere. But there's like a confirmed case in town right now.
Oh.
But yeah, but we went to Italy, 2 weeks ago? We spent a 4-day weekend down in Italy. We've been to France, Luxembourg, Belgium. I've been to Poland, the Netherlands. We're planning some trips to like the Czech Republic. Back to Italy. So we went to a little town called Bari, Italy, which is like on the heel of the boot, if you look on the map, down on the coast. But we want to go to like Rome and in those places. So we're starting to plan some of that out. We want to go back to Poland, Hungary. We're starting to talk about trying to hit as many places as we can while we're here. I mean, I could drive to Paris from my house in 4 hours. So yeah, it's all just right here. We haven't done Austria yet. Austria's right down the road, basically. So, yeah, we like it. I mean, I'll be happy to come home.
Right.
But, yeah, it's cool.
You made me like a loser, Scott.
We joke with our kids all the time, like, y'all have no idea how good you have it. We just took a weekend trip to Italy, to the coast of Italy, and all this. And it didn't really cost us as much, For us, it was a real cheap flight. They have a thing over here called Ryanair, which is like the Spirit Airlines of Europe. And I mean, it's like a Greyhound bus with wings. There's nothing glamorous about it, but cheap flights. And we got a reasonably cheap hotel because it's the off season. So, we just went and did it. And then during Christmas, they have Christmas markets everywhere. Every town has a huge outdoor market, and, they sell, everybody's got a booth that they're selling stuff that they made from home and yada, yada, yada. So we drove this year. I think we did like 4 different countries hitting Christmas markets besides all the ones in Germany. And they were all like a drive. Like we'd drive there in the afternoon, drive back that night kind of thing, just because we're centrally located. It's cool. We really enjoy it.
Have you guys looked at any of the, like the World War II stuff or any of the?
Yeah. So, we live kind of close to the Black Forest, but this area of Germany didn't have a ton go on. But I've been to the Battle of the Bulge site in Belgium I think I've been 3 times now. Yeah. So we went once as a family whenever we first got here. Then we took a work trip where we took a bunch of soldiers out there and walked the battlefield. And then, of course, they have a huge museum and all that stuff that you can go to. And then we took my wife's parents came in November, and we took them. So I've been there 3 times. I love there. We were going to Normandy last year for the anniversary, had to cancel it because of a work thing. And then this year, I think we're not going to go this year in order to, instead of getting a hotel, we're going to do it next year before we move back to the States. We're going to get do an Airbnb out there and spend the whole weekend for the anniversary. But last year we really wanted to go because it was the 75th anniversary, and it didn't work. And I've been to a few other sites throughout Germany for work. Once or twice a year, we'll have like a day trip to some World War II site. We'll do a study on it before we go, and different people have to teach different parts of it to see it. It's really cool.
That would be, especially being where you're at. One of the first things I thought about was like in proximity, you got the concentration camps that are sure within driving distance and all that kind of thing like that. So it'd be really nice to be where you're at.
Yeah, so I haven't seen a concentration camp yet, but I'm not going to leave without doing it. We fight the battle of like what's too much for our kids.
Sure.
Because that is a heavy thing to go see. Like people have been to like Dachau and stuff like that. They're like, man, it is like you don't go in there and giggle and take pictures and stuff. Like it's a very heavy thing. So we're trying to figure out which one's the best one and that type of stuff to go see. But yeah, we're gonna go do all of it. But we may never get the opportunity again. So
yeah, I'd be just like you about it as far as I might even slip off on my own and go over there just to experience it or whatever.
Yep, I went to a week-long school in Poland. When did I go? When was I there? I think I was there in October. So I got to go to a NATO school for a week, and I was the only American student there. But that was cool because, that's what I was. Whenever we weren't in class, I was slipping off, seeing different parts of this little college town in Poland that nobody's ever heard of. But just getting to see everything, it was cool. And like I'm going to a month school in April. I'll be gone for a month. But my wife has taken my kids to what's the damn palace called in Paris? The Venetian. Not the Venetian. What the hell is it called? God damn it. Anyways, she's taking her. I have no interest in going because it's like art and all this shit, and that's not my thing. So she was like, "Hey, so I'm gonna take the girls and we're gonna go to this palace. And while you're gone, is that okay with you?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine. You go right ahead. I'm good."
The Louvre would probably
the Louvre. So that's in Paris, which we're going to do that together. We've had 2 trips planned. One real trip planned, and our dog sitter actually fell through on us at the last minute. We were going to go at Thanksgiving to do actual Paris itself, but she's going to go to this palace. And I sound like a moron because I can't even think of the name of the damn thing, but she's all fired up about it. I'm like, yeah, you go right ahead. I'm not worried about missing that one. I'll catch the next one.
Right.
Yeah.
How is it crossing the border from Germany to Paris? Or to
So, dude, it's like driving to Arkansas for you guys. So it's the EU, the European Union. Like you just drive.
Oh, okay. No border patrol or anything?
Every now and then they might do a checkpoint, but I've never seen one. Like you hear about them. But like, whenever I flew to Poland, nobody ever checked my passport. Whenever I flew back, nobody ever checked my passport. Italy, the same thing, because the flight originated from a European Union country and back. So my lieutenant, my very first lieutenant, the very first platoon I had in Georgia right after I left McAllister, got married last Christmas. So Christmas of 18. And just so happened she's British, and the wedding was just outside of London. So for Christmas that year, that was our Christmas present. Was we didn't buy anything for the girls or for each other. We went to London on Christmas Day, and we spent like 4 days in London, and then went to his wedding there outside of town. Then that's the only time we've gotten a stamp, because they were, now they've withdrawn from the EU, but at the time they were going through it. So that's the only time we've gone through customs going in and out of Europe, or traveling within Europe anyways. Whenever I flew home to the States for my sister's wedding last year, they checked me on the way out and on the way back in, but that's only because it didn't originate there.
Well, like when you're in Germany, like for instance, what do you guys do for a vehicle? I mean, do you just buy one while you're there? Or?
So the Army pays to ship one. So we shipped my wife. So she's got a Volkswagen SUV. So we shipped it over here. And then I had this little beater BMW that I bought whenever I got here. And it's kind of a thing here. So like a soldier buys a beat up car for, say $2,000. He drives it for his 3-year tour. And then whenever he leaves, he sells it for $1,900 to the next guy. And then just on down the line. Well, the Beamer that I got was on its last leg, and it spent more time just sitting in my driveway than anything. And so I wound up, I bought a Jeep while I was here. a Jeep. I've always wanted one, and got a deal on a brand new one, and didn't have to pay taxes on it. So I went ahead and pulled the trigger and got it, and did the first, but I'll have to pay to ship that one. So the Army will ship one vehicle back and won't cost me a dime, but I'll have to pay out of pocket to ship mine. It'll be about $2,000. So that'll hurt. But
yeah, that's what my cousin Dwayne was telling me whenever he was stationed in England, that he bought some kind of little car while he was over there just to drive around, like you said. Just sold it whenever he left or something like that.
Yep.
So you just register her car, just like.
So we have to. So it's a customs thing. So we have to register it through the Army, and U.S. Customs, who then register it with the government here, because like it's the same thing like we talked about before. Is you only get so many that they can bring because it's a strain on their economy. And then our fuel is rationed that we buy on base. So fuel prices here, if you bought them off base, on the economy, or I don't know, what are you guys paying for a gallon of gas?
What are we right now?
About $1.90, isn't it?
No,
Is it that low?
it's
Has it went up?
I paid $2.05 a few days ago.
All right, $2.05.
So you're paying $2.05 for a gallon. They're paying like $1, I think $1.60 or $1.70 a liter. So almost triple what you're paying per gallon. Well, we get U.S. market prices on base, but it's rationed. We only get so much a month. I mean, it's plenty for what I do. I've never ran out of my ration or whatever.
Oh,
But yeah. So each vehicle, and so that's why you're limited the number of vehicles that you can have, so that you can get gas on base and all that.
So do you have a house here? I don't even know. Do you have a house here at all? Like your truck and stuff?
Nope. So my truck, the motor blew up on it right before I left, so I pretty much sold it for nothing. And then with the intent of driving a beater here for 3 years and then buying something new whenever I got back. But now I've got my Jeep, so it's all good. But no, we don't own a house there in the States or anything. Most of our stuff is here with us, but you get to put a good portion of what you want into long-term storage while you're gone. So wherever we get stationed next, about 6 weeks before we leave, they'll come pack all this up, ship it to the States. We'll have a little bit of temporary furniture and live kind of Spartan for a few weeks. And then all of our stuff will get delivered to, wherever it is that we go.
McAllister, right?
Whenever we leave here. The only way I'm going to be stationed in McAllister again is if I'm a recruiter again, and I'm not doing that. So,
Listen,
but I'll roll back through and visit.
There's some other jobs that you can get. I mean, we've got good jobs here, kind of.
You do. So, at 20 years is the first time I'm eligible to retire, which I'm, 99% sure I'm going to stay in a little bit past 20 at least.
Well, I was going to ask you about what your future looked like, or what you thought your future was going to look like.
Yeah. Teresa and I have talked about if the right job was in McAllister, we'd move back in a heartbeat. I mean, that's the only place that we go back and visit where we've been stationed in the Army. Like, we go visit family, and we always make a point to roll through McAllister. I mean, I think I've been back. When did I left in 2015, and I came back. I've been back once a year, except for 20 since I've been here.
And I haven't seen you. Wow.
Yes, you have.
When?
Ben, the first 2 times I came back, I stayed at your brother-in-law's house for like an entire weekend. You were there.
It doesn't surprise me that it doesn't remember.
I remember. It's not served me well.
Yeah, man.
I don't recall. I
think the only time I didn't see you whenever I came back to visit was whenever we were moving here.
All right. Well, I know, but I get so sad.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like I haven't seen you forever. It just feels like forever.
Well, it has been a long time. Like, so in May, I flew back for my sister's wedding, and like I checked in at the airport at DFW or whatever whenever I landed, and the first person that called me is Brian. Hey, dude, are you coming up here? I'm like, no, man, but I did just fly over Lake Eufaula like 30 minutes ago, and like I could see it out of the plane window,
That's funny.
Yeah, and but yeah, we miss it. We've had people visit us. Not you. You guys drove all the way. You go to the beach or whatever, and we were in Georgia and you were in the beach in Alabama, and you just couldn't keep coming east. We've had other folks come and visit us in Georgia.
It's a long way. Because I've been to Savannah, Georgia before. That's a long ways from.
Oh, it's all the way out there, man.
Yeah.
All the way out there.
Did you eat at the Pirate restaurant in Savannah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Big hole in the ground?
Yeah. Yeah, where they used to sneak them from back out to the port, the prisoners and shit. Yeah.
I was shocked. And at the time when I went, I was around 22, I think, years old, 23. And so I had not been away from, home that much. And when they were telling, there was a huge hole in the ground. And, and I'm like, what's that for? And then I tell you the story, of that's how they used to sneak people out of the bar. And they would,
like actual pirates, yeah.
At one point, a cop or a policeman, they said, was kidnapped and put on a pirate ship, basically. And I think he was out to sea for a year, I think.
Yeah. Until the ransom was paid or something. Yeah. It's a pretty cool story. And you can find the other end of the tunnel where it pops out, where they used to take them down on the port, because the river runs from the ocean right down downtown Savannah. It's called a River Street. And yeah, Savannah's a cool place. We liked it out there.
Yeah, it was really really freaky story though. I was like, hey,
yeah, there's a lot of
I want to get out of this restaurant.
We did a bar crawl, but it was a haunted, or a pub crawl, I guess they would call it, but a haunted pub crawl. And you just go bar to bar with a tour guide, and they tell you all the different things that are haunting all these different pubs, and we loved it down there, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. Really cool place, Savannah, Georgia. Tybee Islands.
I've been to Georgia for it was one afternoon. I went out there to some kind of a stone rock city or something like that, and then turned around and drove back. I don't know. It's on the eastern edge. I'm sorry, on the western edge.
The western edge, yeah.
I just wanted to go to say I'd been to Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Across the border. Yeah. I've done that in a few states.
Did that in Maine.
Now, listen, before we stop or anything like that,
right?
We still have something else.
We still have quite a bit to talk about.
Okay. I didn't thought maybe we were winding down here. I wanted to talk about that one thing that you mentioned. So.
Well, I was telling him out in the hallway about. You had mentioned it earlier about the prison.
Yeah.
In Kansas, and I want to talk about that. I know you and I have talked about some of the high-profile, prisoners that were there while you were there. So I wanted to touch base on that.
So for the record, while I was working at that prison, was one of the times I drove back down and visited McAllister and saw you, and we talked about all this.
Okay, I thought that
was one of the visits. But
yeah.
So
I remember that.
So whenever I first got to Georgia, to Fort Stewart, I took over a platoon. So like I said, right now I'm in an MP company, which is like 170 people. A platoon is the next smaller unit from that makes up a company. There's 3 of them. And there's about 40 or so soldiers in it. And so I was in charge of one of those, me and a lieutenant. And they had, at the U.S. Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, is like the military's biggest prison, most high secure facility. So anyone that has a service sentence over 10 years or committed murder, they have death row there. They haven't executed anyone, I think, since like the 60s or 70s or something, but supposedly we're close to that streak coming to an end if you watch the news. But so anyways, they had a unit deployed from there to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And so they're MPs that work there, but they're a different specialty. They're actually corrections specialists. So they specialize in working in prisons and with detainees. So they sent them down to Cuba for a deployment to work at Guantanamo Bay. And, they were having trouble manning all their shifts with who they had left. And so they deployed a few platoons at a time to go work. And mine got selected and we got to go. So we were there from like January to May of 16. So I'd never been there before. You always hear all these stories and everything of what's going on in the old prison, the old Leavenworth prison that you always hear stories and see on movies, is still there. Most of it is like fallen down. They've got a new high-tech facility behind it, but you drive right past it with the old walls and everything. Looks like Shawshank. But
did you ever go in?
The old one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Leavenworth Penitentiary is just outside the gate, and I went in there too. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But anyways, while I worked there, inside the prison where my soldiers were working, I would go in there every day and check on my soldiers, but I didn't work a shift or anything. I supervised my guys, managed their schedule, and all that type of stuff, kind of the administrative pieces of it. But they had everyone in there from Bradley Manning or Chelsea Manning. Who else is a big one? The guy that just got released, Clint Lawrence, was the only guys that got pardoned by the president. I don't know how long has that been, 6 or 8 weeks ago. He was in there at the time. So Hasan, the Fort Hood shooter, was in there. He was on death row, so got to see him again. Bales, I think it's Ryan Bales, the guy that walked off the fire base in Afghanistan. And no, not Bergdahl. He was never in there.
Never in there?
Bales is the one that walked off and murdered all the Afghan civilians.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yep. No, Bergdahl never did time. So I think he was under some type of restriction and under guard, like in the barracks, but he never did time, like in a military prison.
Was you ever around him? Or
Bergdahl, no. I had a friend of mine in that unit at Fort Stewart, though, that whenever he first got given back to U.S. forces and got to San Antonio, he was basically in charge of escorting him for about 3 or 4 months, though.
Okay.
So, yeah, he said that was wild.
Did you
but
know
no, I've never.
That searched for him when he
So whenever I got there, he had not been missing that. Whenever I got to Afghanistan, he had not been missing that long. Like I think under a year. I'd have to look up the timeline of when it happened, but I think under a year he had been taken captive, and it was not terribly far from Kunar. It wasn't in Kunar where he got taken, but he was pretty close by. So we would get intelligence every now and then that he had been moved through the area or something. So it was always a thing. But yeah, I knew a lot of people that were in his AO whenever he walked off and all that went down.
I knew you were somewhat close to it, so I wasn't sure how that all went down. And
yeah,
do you say that he went AWOL, or do you say that he deserted, or is it the same thing?
It's essentially so the difference between AWOL and desertion is a time frame. You're AWOL until you've been gone for 30 days, and then you're a deserter at a time of war. Yeah, so
he'd go AWOL initially, and then.
Yep. And I think desertion, I would have to look, but I think desertion has to happen during a time of war. You know what I mean? So
I just didn't want to get it wrong when I said AWOL. I didn't want to.
Yeah, AWOL's fine. He walked off. So.
Okay, so back to Leavenworth.
Yep. So didn't see anything too crazy in there for the most part, and I kind of asked him about it there. So everybody that's in that jail, the shortest sentence anyone's in the USDB is 10 years. So they don't want you to they don't want to be messed with. Like they know they've got to be there. They've got to do their time. There is parole in military prisons, or some form of it, but it doesn't happen very often. Like, so they know they're serving their sentence, right? So they don't want to be jacked with. There's not a whole lot of fighting that goes on. You don't get a whole lot of the crazy stuff going on. I don't know. It's one of the spookiest, not spooky, but just the weirdest things. So they've got a barber shop in there, right? So these guys, just like a regular prison, they get licensed as barbers, they get trained, and they actually get like certified as barbers. But to be going to the barber shop and somebody's getting their hair cut, and like the dude that's cutting his hair, murdered somebody 25 years ago in his barracks room or something. It's like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, you want to let him get to you with some clippers, but. And then it was kind of surreal seeing someone like Chelsea Manning, who was so famous at the time, worked in they have like a wood shop where they would build things, and then they were sold at this store on Fort Leavenworth. Like you could order a coffee table that they made in the wood shop, right? And that's where Chelsea Manning worked. Walk back there and inmate Manning's making a table or making a chair or, making some stand for something or whatever. And just kind of wild. So nothing too crazy really went on at Leavenworth. It's a pretty tame and boring existence, but I don't want to go there, so I'm trying to avoid that.
There's nothing really goes on in Kansas,
No, and so Leavenworth, so that's Fort Leavenworth, right? The Army base, and it's got two jails on it. It's got the USDB, which is the high-end facility, and then it's got the Regional Confinement Facility on it, which is a smaller jail for shorter sentences and like lesser crimes. They have a lot more issues inside that facility. My guys didn't work in that one because it's a short sentence, and you'll get more of the dudes that are like, man, I'm only here for, 6 months, 8 months, whatever. So they'll get a lot more fighting, a lot more of the craziness going on that you hear about inside jails. But the town of Leavenworth outside the gate is nothing but prison. So you have the Leavenworth Pen, the penitentiary. That's where Michael Vick served his time on his whole deal. And then you've had, there's some other real famous, what's that?
Did you say Michael Vick?
Michael Vick, yes. He was at the Leavenworth Pen in Kansas is where he served time on his deal. And this place is actually like Shawshank. Like I'm talking, it's old, gray, nasty place. You see it, it looks awful. You're just like, oh my God, it's terrible. Well, I got to go in. So at some point in a military prisoner's like process, they run out of all their appeals and they can be officially discharged from the military. And once they do that, they will file to be the slang term for it. They call it FedExing. They get basically extradited out into the federal system. And because they have a better chance at parole, I guess, in the federal system than they do in the military system. So whenever it gets approved, they'll get like a group of them, like 7 of them. You have to move them from the USDB on base to the Leavenworth Pen. And then from there, they get doled out into the federal system. Kind of, I think they usually try to move them closer to where like their home of record is or something. I don't know. Well, anyways, they don't tell them whenever it's happening for like security reasons, because you literally drive them over in like a prison van. They just know that it's been approved. It's going to happen at some point. Well, one day they get woken up at 2:30 a.m., taken out of their cell, strip searched the whole deal, put their clothes back on, put out into the van and taken over to the Leavenworth Pen. So that there's no way of it getting out. Well, I got picked to do an escort, and each prisoner, it's a 1-for-1 thing. So every prisoner getting FedExed has to have an escort. And they asked me to escort one time. And I got to escort this dude to inside the Leavenworth Pen, where literally you go through these stone walls. It's old school looking bars that slide open. You go in, they slam them shut behind you. I was scared, and I wasn't even having to stay. And then you go in, and they're banging on, like they're in these giant holding cells, and people are banging on the bars and catcalling them and telling them all the shit that's going to happen to them once they get let inside and yada, yada, yada. And you got to stand there while they go through like their strip search and all that until they actually get taken into federal custody. And then you're done and you get to leave. And it's like, shit, man. Like that's deterrent enough. Like every 14-year-old should have to walk through that place one time, and you would never commit a crime ever.
That's why I'm shocked at the amount of crime in McAllister.
Yeah, you got the pin right there.
OST right here. It's like, really? You're not far from this place, at all.
Yeah.
Around here, they're thinking, well, I'm not really going to do any time anyway. So.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, and then while I was there, they had like botched executions and the whole thing. Like, man, that's enough to keep me out of trouble. Like, I don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to kill me. Get it right the first time, please.
Absolutely. So, what's your favorite dish out there, German food wise?
I like currywurst, and I'm a big fan of beer, and they make really good beer out here. It's nothing. Yeah. So what makes German beer so good and why it's so popular is they have purity laws here, and they're only allowed like 4 ingredients. Like they can't put any fillers in it. They can't put any preservatives, anything like that. And so it's very like pure, and you can taste it in the beer. It's really, really good.
So you can definitely taste the difference.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Like I said, I went home in May for my sister's wedding, and that was the first time anybody like handed me a Bud Light.
Right.
Since I'd always been like, oh, I'm never going to be a beer snob. I'll just drink Bud Light or Coors Light or whatever's cold in the fridge. Never again. Never again.
Well, you got to come back at some point. So what are you going to
Yeah, but you can buy good beer. I just never would do it. Like I always used to make fun of people because they're beer snobs or whatever. And
That's why you never
So-
start drinking the good beer, because when you do, then you can't go back.
Exactly. I screwed up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm guessing anyways. I don't know firsthand knowledge of this, but I'm sure it's a lot more expensive.
To live here or just the beer?
No, the good beer, even in the States. It's
Oh, in
not
the States, the
expensive.
good beer's a lot more expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
But here, so people drink so much here, it's cheaper so if we went out and got, like a bratwurst or schnitzel or whatever at the local restaurant, you would order a beer because it's like half the price of ordering water
Damn.
here.
Really?
Like, yeah, like you'll get a beer, and it's nothing for a beer to be like $1.50 or €1.50 or whatever. But like if you order water, it's like, one, it's going to come in this big glass bottle for everyone to like share. You get a glass and pour it, and it's going to be maybe €5, €6 for that. And yeah, but it's like $1.50 for a beer. So
All I know about beer in Germany is from what I learned at Beer Fest, on the movie Beer Fest, anyways.
I don't know if I ever saw that one.
It's a good movie. It's
Yeah.
very, very funny. You gotta have my type of sense of humor though to find it funny. You probably think it's just stupid, but for me, it was.
It's probably right up my alley. Yeah. No, it's still like, it really is really good beer. Like, it tastes good. But here, I mean, so drinking's not it's not a big deal here. They drink a beer with their breakfast. They drink a beer at lunch. They drink a beer at dinner. It's not like, if Lucas on his lunch break was drinking a beer out at the work site or whatever, people would freak out. And here it's nothing. You walk through the Frankfurt airport at 7 a.m., people are eating their sausage McMuffin from McDonald's and drinking a beer. Like, it's just what they do. But they start at 12. You know what I mean? I mean, it's
Right.
it's nothing for a 12-year-old kid to have a beer over here. So
Really?
Damn, dude.
yeah, but they don't they're not getting now at festivals. They get hammered. I mean, I'm sure you've seen Oktoberfest pictures on the internet, and I mean,
Right.
that's just an absolute shit show.
Yeah.
But
So
nothing I've ever seen. What's that?
Are your daughters drinking beer?
No, I would let them. I've let them both taste it,
Yeah.
and they don't like it,
I like
so
it.
they don't. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't let them like drink because I mean, they'll serve it to you in a giant glass.
A 12-year-old.
But yeah, like, so my buddy here is married to a German. He's been here for like 7 years. He keeps like getting consecutive assignment. He loves it. So his wife is German, never been to the States. And so their son, he's 3. And so one, he's bilingual. He's 3, he can speak German and English just fluently and go back and forth between the two. But he drinks near beer, like alcohol-free beer at dinner. So like we'll go out to dinner or whatever, and you'll see this kid. So to order a beer, you hold up one finger and say "Ein Bier bitte," and it's like, "1 beer, please." And he orders a beer that way. And whenever he's done, he slams it down and asks for another one. They don't let him drink like alcohol beer because he's 3, but he gets the alcohol-free stuff in the restaurant all the time. He loves it.
Wow.
Yeah. See, my family on my mom's side comes from Germany. That's the problem. I'm born in the wrong continent. Damn it.
Well, going back to, I don't know, the very beginning of your military career, what's something you wish you had known going into it when you started out?
Like personally, or like the overall experience? Like, am I giving advice, or is it?
I would say just anything, something that comes to your mind that you wish you would have known first.
I wish I'd have known more about what the Army had to offer besides and what I'd be interested in. So, like I said, I thought I wanted to be a cop, and which, I mean, I like doing law enforcement and all that, but I don't want to do law enforcement work anymore, and I figured that out fairly quick. So that was a good thing. I wish I had known more about so I never pulled the trigger and went and tried out to be special forces or to be a ranger or to do any of that. I wish I had known about that stuff coming in, and that I would want to do it as badly as I wish I had done, and done it whenever I was 19 and 20, and a little bit, and didn't have my wife and I've been together since we were 16. She's been with me through this whole thing, but like done it whenever I didn't have kids, because that changes the whole outlook on things. So I I wish I'd done that, but I also wish I'd known more about what I was really receiving from the Army, because I could have taken advantage of it. Like I didn't finish. So I've got an associate's and a bachelor's, but I didn't finish my bachelor's degree until last summer because I just wasted like the first 7 years in the Army not taking advantage of the college money that's out there. You know, I could have a master's degree by now without paying a cent for it if I'd have just paid attention. So stuff like that, I wish I had a little bit better knowledge, but I didn't have anybody around me that knew any of that. Like my uncle was in Desert Storm, but he was like a logistics guy. And he joined the Army because during his senior year, he had a kid with, the lady that turned out to be his wife later, but he had no way to support his family. Well, the Army was a guaranteed paycheck. So he joined the Army for a few years and then got out. He wasn't all about it at all. He did his time and got out. So I didn't have anybody that could really tell me about that stuff that now I wish, and I'm not even saying, I might have gone to Special Forces selection and washed out on the first day. I have no idea. I'm not one of those dudes that, oh yeah, I could have done that, but I didn't. I just never pulled the trigger and went and tried like I wish I had, just to experience some different things and just, so I wish I guess said all that to say I wish I'd kind of gone for it a little bit more with some of the, the higher end things, but I don't regret anything. I mean, I got to do a lot of really cool stuff and,
Well,
I don't want to go special.
I figured that was a big selling point basically for a recruiter when you were in high school is, talk about the Rangers or, the Special Forces. But
it depends on who you're talking to. You got to figure out, recruiting. Yeah. You got to figure out what that kid's all about and figure out how the Army can help them,
And so maybe you didn't exhibit any of those.
I didn't. I walked in and hey, I want to join the Army. Why? Well, because 9/11. All right. Well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to be a cop someday. Oh, cool. You ever heard about the MPs? You qualify for it.
You have to be recruited, basically, right?
No, dude. I walked in ready to go. I mean,
when you were a recruiter here, did you utilize a lot of that, information or stuff that you knew beforehand about, trying to tell the recruit about, the Special Forces or the Rangers or a lot of things?
Yeah. If they seem like it fit what they would be good at and what they would like, you have to, the Army, I mean, whenever I was a recruiter, I could have told you how many different jobs there were because it's on a thing. It's part of what they teach you. But I mean, there really is, there's a place in the Army for people that want to go into the medical field. There's a place in the Army for just technology whizzes. There's a place in the Army for, people that want to hide in the bushes and sneak up on people and shoot them. I mean, it's all of that stuff is there. So if I met a kid, you kind of try to figure out what makes them tick and figure out how the Army, kind of fits that. And you got to kind of shape it that way. So I put a few kids in with Ranger contracts. So you can get a contract where you're guaranteed to go to Ranger school. You're not guaranteed to graduate,
right?
But which there I put a few kids in on it. I think one or two made it through. That program, unfortunately, kids get scared of it before they get there and wind up like getting out of the Ranger part of their contract while they're in training. They kind of let the dragon in the distance kind of get them a little bit, which maybe that would, like I said, maybe that would have been me if I'd have come in with one of those. I don't know.
That's kind of the perks of getting recruited and going through that process rather than showing up to the recruit office saying, I'm ready to sign up.
Yeah.
They're more apt to teach you and tell you about everything that you can do rather than, oh, okay, let's sign this guy up. He's easy. Let's get him through,
Yeah. I did my best, as far as writing contracts and things my last year out there because those kids that I was putting in the Army the last year, I'd met them whenever they were sophomores and I knew them. And the guy that I worked for initially, that guy, Donnie, I was talking about at the beginning, he told me, he said, listen, man, I know those sophomores, they don't do anything for you right now. Like you can't put them in. It's illegal. Like it's just not going to happen. They're too young. Yada, yada. He said, but get to know them because in 3 years, you're going to be on your way out of here. And if they know you and trust you and know that you'll take care of them, they're going to come to you and you're going to know them already and you're going to be able to take care of them properly. So my last year, I mean, I spent most of my time just, all right, hey, Ben's ready to go now. So I go, find Ben, and we already knew each other and I knew, what you were into and what you wanted to do, what you qualified for and made that work for you. And then, and then you'd tell me about your buddy Lucas and I'd go find Lucas and, and I knew him. And I was in good with, especially in Broken Bow, I was in good with all the coaches down there. We used to do color guard stuff at football games and basketball games. I threw out so I gave the Broken Bow high school, they put in a new scoreboard with like a new flagpole and stuff in center field. So I had a flag that had flown over our base in Afghanistan with a certificate. Well, I gave that to them because they didn't have a flag for the field. So they had me like throw out the first pitch at their first game. Like, you know what I mean? Well, yeah. I wound up putting some of those kids in the Army just by doing that. You don't have to go be the typical recruiter that's just slinging BS and doing that stuff. So.
Yeah, because that's what you think about when you think of a recruiter. I've always.
Oh, man, and you fight that the whole time you're out there. I mean, you walk up and, some kid's excited to join the Army, and he goes to introduce you to his parents, and first thing he tells you is like, well, I know everything you're going to tell me is a lie. So, like, oh, okay, well, that's how we're starting this conversation. Outstanding. and happened all the time.
Well, one last thing I wanted to bring up and talk about was an organization I guess that you were close to while you were here, and I don't know if you still are. I'm sure you are at some point, the Hornet's Nest.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about them a little bit and everything behind that.
Yeah. And if you're okay with it, I'll spin that into something else that I'm supporting too. So the Hornet's Nest is a documentary that they made about the infantry unit that I was attached to in Afghanistan. We actually, you were there. We did a screening in McAllister whenever it came out, but they went with us. So just a couple weeks before we went home, we had some intelligence about basically the biggest warlord in Kunar that we could finally get a hold of him. And we called him QZR. His actual name was like Kari Zia Rahman, I think is how you say it. And so we went for it. And whenever I say 2 weeks from going home, I'm talking this mission launched on March 29th of 2011. And I think I was at my house in Texas by like April 16th or something. So keep that in mind. So we launched and we just happened to have this ABC News reporter with us. And he had been with us through several other things. He was there for a year, named Mike Betcher. He's a professor at OU, a journalism professor. But he was embedded with us, and things went south fast on this mission, and we wound up losing 6 guys just that first day. And it was one of those missions that was going to take 3 days, and we were out there for 9, I think is the total, by the time we got out of there, with a lot of wounded, and then the 6 killed in action. Luckily, we didn't have any more killed. But anyways, the movie kind of starts off in about the middle of our deployment with us, with some of our guys. And then he broke off and he went and stayed with a few other units throughout his year with a Marine unit there. And it breaks into there. And then the last, I don't know, Ben, what do you think? It's the last third of the movie is about that last mission that we did. Do you remember? Yeah, third, if not even close to half. And goes with us straight from from the rock drill, which is like the big rehearsal that we do, to launching with us whenever we air assaulted onto this objective and got into it. And he has all the footage from the firefight. So there was 2 main objectives. I was on one objective, he was on another, where most of the footage came from. But we all got hit at the same time. I can't remember how many hours the initial firefight went for, but it was several. So bad weather rolled in, and we got ambushed. We knew we were going to get ambushed whenever the weather went bad, just because of where we were. We were right on the Pakistan border. And so bad weather rolled in, we got ambushed, and it just went on and on and on for hours and hours. They were hitting us, and then the other objective, I think, was about 1.5 miles away across the valley. They were getting hit at the same time. And then so, of course, we're all trying to call for artillery at the same time. We're trying to get medevacs in. The medevacs can't fly because of the weather. And then once they do, they're trying to prioritize, who's got the most hurt at their location, who's hurt the worst. And then one of the medevac helicopters actually basically got shot down. It was able to limp back to base. But as they were coming in trying to get one of our guys, got turned around because it got so badly shot up. But anyways, through that, and the movie is not, so there's a couple other documentaries. One of them's called Restrepo, that you've probably heard of, that happened just across the river from us in the Korengal Valley. And it's got a little too much like blood and guts for me. Like there's a American soldier that gets killed at one point in that movie, and you actually see them like moving his body. And the Hornet's Nest did a really good job of capturing everything and the emotion of all of it without showing any of that, which I thought was great, because you don't need to. You don't need to see, one of our guys all shot up and dead. It doesn't add anything to it. And I'm not taking away anything from Restrepo. I mean, it was a great documentary too, but I just didn't think it was necessary. But anyways, through that, so like I said, I was attached to that unit. They were the 101st out of Fort Campbell, and we were out of Fort Hood. So whenever we left that April, they went back to Fort Campbell, we went back to Fort Hood, and we were all kind of separated. Well, then they started making this movie, and we started doing all the premiere stuff for it. And I can't even remember how I initially got wrapped up in it. But this guy, one of the guys that got shot on our objective, his name's Nate Allen. The dude's a freaking hero. He was actually going to try to retrieve one of our killed in action and wound up getting shot. And I worked on him whenever he got back, the medics worked on him, had him stable. I kind of just monitored him for a little while. Help kind of, I think I changed a couple bandages or something until we could actually fly him out. But I think he's actually the one that got in touch with me about the movie. And we started going really around the country. I kind of I went to like the Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas region for premieres. We even did like a big red carpet in Dallas. I mean, it was nuts. Winona Judd was there. She sings the song on the soundtrack and all this. But got involved with all the Gold Star families from that. So Gold Stars are the family members of those killed in action. So became really good friends with Elizabeth and Terry Burgess, who are my friend Brian Burgess's parents, and he was killed that day. And then Offren Arichaga, who we called AC, he got killed that day on the other objective. His wife and I became really good friends through all that. But anyways, we raised a lot of money for an organization called Snowball Express. So whenever you see the stuff talking about Gary Sinise flying all these kids to like Disney World or flying to Dallas, he's talking about Snowball Express. And so anyways, we raised, just in McAllister, we raised over $3,000, I think, in one night. And then we did the premiere and raised a bunch of money that night. Brian helped out a ton with that. And then we did like a hero workout that we created the next day at the CrossFit gym. And then I think the gym matched like up to like $1,000 of the donation or something. We wound up sending over like $3,000 there, and which was like the equivalent of like 2 or 3 kids getting to go. And they go for like this 4-day weekend. I think they do it at Disney World now, but at the time they were doing it in Fort Worth. I mean, they bring every band in, and these kids just get a dream weekend. American Airlines rents out entire planes. So these kids don't get like a ticket and fly on a plane. The plane is just Snowball kids, and there's no rules on the flight. I mean, kids are climbing over the seats, and they're hanging out in the luggage bins up above the seats, and they get to go to the cockpit. I mean, they get to do whatever the hell they want, and they're all Gold Star kids, and they should get to. So it was a really cool thing. So
I'll cut that
like
off.
through my 3 deployments, I've got several friends of mine that were killed that have kids. And so and especially once I've had them. So that's just like a thing that like, I'll do anything for a Gold Star kid. I don't have to have known their parents. I don't have to do anything. And I think most service members are the same way, but if a Gold Star kid or family member needs something, we'll just drop whatever it is that we're doing and go take care of it. And so that's kind of what Snowball's about. So that's why it's always been a big deal. I haven't done anything for them in a year or two. I may need to, but I'm doing an event in a few weeks, actually. So have you ever heard of the company GoRuck?
Yes.
They do. Okay. So I'm doing one of their challenges, one of their 12-hour endurance events in like 3 or 4 weeks. But one of my really good friends, we're actually drill sergeants together, he went, after we got done being drill sergeants, he went to Special Forces selection and became a Green Beret. Anyways, he just retired like a couple weeks ago, and he owns a CrossFit gym in Colorado, and he's been like basically programming and training me, getting me ready for this event. But he is doing so mine's on March 27th. On March 28th, he's doing an event called the Grand Traverse or the Great Traverse. But it's a 100-mile endurance race, and it's over a mountain pass in Colorado, and he's either running or cross-country skiing the whole 100 miles. And doing it in a team. Yeah, he's nuts. But anyways, he's doing it to raise money for the Green Beret Foundation. So they take care of like our Green Beret folks specifically. And so it's a big deal to him. So anyways, he's raising money for that. I've got the link in my Instagram bio, and then I'll send it to you. Maybe we can plug it with this, but I'd love to see him raise some more money. I think his goal is like $3,000. He's about halfway there. I'd like to see him just crush it, because he's an amazing dude. He's doing some great things for the veteran community in Colorado now that he's retired, physical fitness wise. And he's a beast of a human. Like whenever he went to Special Forces selection, it was never a thing like, oh, I wonder if Will's going to make it. Like we knew he was going to make it. Like there was no question. And he's just a machine. And like whenever you go to his Instagram page, like all of his stories, he's running some mountain pass somewhere at like a 6:15, 6:30 mile pace and talking into his camera like it's nothing. And he's kind of doing his thing, and there'd be snow and ice in his beard and whatever, and doing it. So yeah, definitely, I definitely want to help him do that. And then he and I are starting to talk. I'm going to do something before the end of this calendar year that's going to be a pretty big endurance event. I don't know what yet. It's not going to be 100 miles. I don't have that in me, but I'm going to do something big to raise money. Yeah. I don't know. It probably won't be for the Green Beret Foundation, just because I'm not a part of that community. I want to help them with this, but I want to find another one out there to raise some money for, to help out, maybe Snowball again or something similar. So yeah, if people want to see the Hornet's Nest, it's on Amazon. So if you got Amazon Prime, you can access it for, just because you have the subscription. If not, I think you pay like $2.99 or something to stream it if you look. But it's a good movie. It's worth watching. I think it's
yes,
they did a really good job. It's not too over the top. There's a lot of, I get real sick of the veterans out there's. I'm sure you see them every now and then. There's a small contingent, but unfortunately they're the loudest of this. I call them the thank me for my service guys, and they want to constantly be recognized for serving their country, which is actually like exactly opposite of what we teach, which is, one of our Army values is selfless service. And
we said that at one point on, I think, not a memorial, but a Veterans Day or something.
Mm-hmm.
Something I remember you and I were talking, and you were like, the thank you for your service thing, you're not really into that.
Yeah, it's not like it offends me. If someone comes up and thanks me for my service, I'm always, it makes me feel good. But that's not why anybody that joined the military to try to be praised for it or to try to get something from, feels like they're owed something because they served. Like, okay, well, you missed the entire point. Like that's not what it's about. The service itself. Like I've just told you how hard it is to get into the Army. Like less than 1% of the American population serves in the military. Like, isn't that enough? Is all that college money, is that not enough? Do you have to have somebody constantly tell you how great you are to validate what you did? Like, nah, like move on. Like, I think the most heroic thing somebody can do is something, like Wilbur, my buddy that I was just talking about. Like that guy just retired a month ago and he already found some other way to serve. He's already raising money for something else. And those are the type of, that's the majority of the veteran community, I think.
Well, it's kind of hard for like a civilian to have an opinion, I think, either way on that, so I'll just listen to your opinion and go with it. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard for me to say, well, yeah, you're right. They shouldn't be acting like that or whatever. I can't say that.
Well, the good thing about, in America right now, it's been since like World War II, in my mind, that veterans, people that are serving in the military, have been lifted up. Seen.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I from a perspective of just a common guy or whatever, I have to admit I'm really bad about holding these guys, not hold them to a standard, but like I view guys in the military as something a little bit more, basically for what you were saying, the idea of doing it selflessly.
Yeah.
Like right now you live in Germany, and I'm sure you're enjoying your time there and those kind of things like that, but I mean, you're doing it out of service. You know what I mean? You're doing it as a service. So for me, for someone to consciously make that decision, because, you know, it's obviously, you know, you went into the military willingly. So, I mean, it was your decision to do that, but to do it and to make that choice, I mean, there's a certain amount of, for me and for my family anyway, there's a certain amount of prestige in our minds for folks like yourself.
Right.
You know, I mean, because it's
and I'm
like we are, you know. So.
Yeah, and I'm not saying people shouldn't be proud of their service or anything like that. I think they should. And like I said, I'm not saying don't thank a veteran for their service, but I'm talking about the dudes that. What's a good example? Oh, Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash. Within 10 minutes, I had 20 people that I know on Facebook posting like, well, you know, there was a helicopter crash 3 years ago and 2 soldiers died and nobody said anything about that. Like, okay, but this has nothing to do with it. Why are you looking to get offended?
Right.
Like, and it's one of those things. It makes me crazy. Or somebody, I think I heard somebody talking about it on another podcast, but one of the more popular posts like that would post about these Marines that died in a helicopter crash. And there was a lot of them, but the helicopter crash happened in 2005.
A long time ago. Yeah. It made a lot of people think that it happened on the same day.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
like, this did not happen. This happened a long time. Like you said.
But like, you know, we all know Kobe was Ben's hero or is Ben's hero. And so it's literally the equivalent of Ben posting something about Kobe, an American icon, dying way before his time, and then me getting mad about it and saying, well, you didn't say anything about this helicopter crash for the soldier death. You're right, I didn't. I'm sorry. Next time before I say anything about my favorite athlete dying, I'll make sure that I go back and I acknowledge every single tragedy that's happened to it. You know, like, get the fuck out of here. It makes me crazy.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about Kobe Bryant dying on the podcast yet.
Dude, so I was not a Kobe super fan. He's my number 2 all-time, you know, I think he's the number 2 all-time greatest, and I'll listen to every argument about him being number 1. I didn't think somebody like that dying would affect me like it did. And I didn't cry over it. I didn't miss work over it. But man, that hit me hard. Him die, and with his kid, you know, I mean, that was tough.
Dude, it was awesome spending time with you.
Yeah,
it was very awesome on the show finally. Episode 21. This episode is brought to you by Blackline Insurance Group. Visit blacklineinsuranceGroup.com. Ben at Blackline Insurance Group, and just so happens I'm Ben at Blackline Insurance Group.
Yeah, welcome to my world.
What do you plan on doing in the future? I mean, when you move back, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, so I've got at least one move in the Army left. So I'll leave here. I'll be at 19 years in. And we don't know where we'll go from here. I'll know about a year from now. And then it's kind of by ear at that point. So I'm eligible for promotion at the end of this year. If I get selected for promotion, that'll keep me in at least another 3. And then after that, it kind of depends if I get that last promotion or not, or even if I may just be ready to be done at that point. And then I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I got to find a real job, I guess.
You can't live off the retirement money?
I won't be able to live off it. No, it's not quite that good. What it should allow me to do, though, is pay for a mortgage and all that comes with it, and probably a car payment, and then my real job will handle the rest of it. So, and I'm good with that. Like that's more than enough for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, something tells me you're not going to have an issue finding something that you are going to want to do, you know.
Yeah, I just don't know what it is yet. And it's a daunting thing to think about. Like, this is literally all I've ever done. Like, I went to high school and then I joined the Army. And so now it's kind of oh shit, what am I going to do? Like, I got to go be an actual civilian. I mean, I look forward to it. I think it'll be really cool, really neat. It's going to be weird. My wife and I talked about it the other day, to not have the possibility of me having an extended absence, like looming all the time. You know, like, I mean, I could get deployed at a moment's notice for, I've been gone for 12 months straight 3 different times. You know what I mean? And so that always kind of looms out there, and it'll be a weird relief, I think, whenever that's not even a possibility. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you've had some extended absences that are,
Yes.
unplanned. So you know kind of what that's like. And so not having that as a thing is,
you have it,
no, but you understand. I mean, you understand what that is.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
terrible.
It sucks. Being gone's being gone, period.
Yeah.
I don't care where you're at. So
I agree.
we'll
Well,
see.
say I agree.
Well, I can relate in that, like, the oil field's all other. So,
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I did nursing for like a year and a half, which was culture shock, definitely. But,
Yeah.
it was like, I ended up going back to it. You know what I mean? I'm just like, damn, I know this. I don't have to learn anything on this. I already know how to do this. So they would be tough, man. Especially, like you said, doing it all this time. And of course, the oil field's a little bit more, how would I say, lackadaisical than being in the military. So, I mean, that's definitely, it's a culture within itself. So you're going to be out with the common folk then whenever you break out of there.
Yeah. I don't know if most of my civilian friends will be able to deal with me. I may not have very many by the time I'm done.
Well, that's
They'll get rid of me.
Wayne says, he's like, I don't know how to live where I don't have some sort of like a PT requirement or something like that.
Yeah.
Maintain that. He's
Dude,
like,
I don't even have to think about what I wear every day. Like, I know exactly. Like, don't even have to think about it. Like, I get stressed out on Sundays, worried about what I got to put on to,
What do you want to plug, Lucas?
I will plug. I'll plug my niece's little thing. She's going to San Diego. Of course, she's been on here before, but she's going to San Diego.
Ava Rose.
Yeah, here in.
the singer, right?
Yeah. She's got a thing. She's gonna sing at this. Crap! If I'm gonna plug it, I should know more about it. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Anyway, she's been selected to go out there and sing for this global awareness something or other out there.
You can use
I'll
your
have
phone.
to. I'll have to like give you the link, and you can put it.
Well, just go ahead and start looking at it, and I'll go ahead and do my plug. You look that up real quick. I want to plug, once again, the Parkinson's Run in April 26th. It's on a Sunday. It's going to be Sunday afternoon, of course. Parkinson's, affects a lot of people, and, we're trying to gain awareness or raise awareness to it. I think there's a lot of people out there that have it that really have no support. And I just kind of want to let everybody know there is a support group. And they also box. They also have a boxing class here at CrossFit McAllister. And if you look it up, boxing helps tremendously with people with Parkinson's. So I think that's really cool. And I haven't been asked to do this. It's solely from the heart. But, my father-in-law, Larry, has Parkinson's. And so we've learned a lot, over the years after he's been diagnosed, and trying to help gain awareness or raise awareness for Parkinson's. So the run is April 26th. There's also a walk. And you can look it up on Facebook or Google or whatever to find more about, the run, and here in McAllister on April 26th, Sunday afternoon. Well, that's all I know. I'm sitting here trying to give you time, but you're so
I'm not finding it, dude.
slow.
I can't find the thing on it.
Well, look her up, Ava Rose Johnson.
Yeah, my niece.
She's doing big things. She's been on the podcast before. Well, she's going to sing. Is this the $5,000 a plate dinner that you're talking about? And
Well,
Nathan told you that, you can come if you want, but you have to pay for your.
Yeah, his
told me.
meal and his daughter's meal are paid for. But if I want to go, I have to pay $5,000 to eat. I'm not going to go.
Are you going?
But
Yeah, but he told me at the basketball game a couple weeks ago. And he said, there's some other things coming down, you know, some other big things. He didn't tell me exactly what, but, and he said, you know, and he told us on the podcast, before he tells people, he's got to make sure, you know, 100% that some of these opportunities are really happening. Because I think they get bombarded.
Well, there's several things that they're working on that they've been contacted about doing.
Right.
But yeah, like you said, he didn't want to sit there and throw something out there and then it not happen.
Right.
But yeah, she got selected to sing at the state tournament.
I saw that.
And you know, all that stuff like that. I mean, she works hard. Then she picked up the guitar in like a week, and the first thing she did was write a song.
I saw that as well.
You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah,
dude, I was never that talented. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I still have never written a song worth hearing. So,
I'll disagree.
But anyway.
All right, do your plug one more time, Scott.
So it's the Green Beret Foundation. I will post. So if you go to my Instagram at MP Scott Morgan, it's a lame ass username, but it's been my internet username since I was 18. It's in my bio. It goes straight to my buddy's fundraiser. And then he is at Jeremiah_Blackbeard. I'll send you all that stuff. You can see it. He's got a lot of great stuff. But yeah, even if you can just donate a couple bucks, it'll go a long ways towards helping him meet his goal. And then I'm sure he's going to be Instagram living while he's out, you know, doing this 100-mile trek, and it's pretty incredible. Yeah. And I'm doing that 12-hour thing. Doesn't even compare. We're just walking around with some heavy backpacks on and carrying some heavy stuff and doing some PT. So
that's going to be
really getting after it. It's going to be cool. They center it around the Battle of Frankfurt, actually. So you get like a history lesson as you do it. Yeah. So it'll be cool. And then I'm looking at some other longer endurance things to do later on this year. And I think I'm going to do a specific fundraiser, and I'll throw that out to you whenever I figure out what it is.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, I'm Ben, LJ, I Don't Drink Coffee podcast. Scott Morgan, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for your service, Scott.
Yes.
Thank you guys for having me.
Well, I'm saying it.
I told you that already. Listen to me at all.
That's the thing I do.
Scott, good night.
Good night. We'll talk to y'all later.
Yes.
Thanks for tolerating us, man.
Yes.
We appreciate it, for real.
Yeah.
We're gonna have you.
That was fun, man.
On again, because I'm sure we didn't even scratch the surface.
Oh yeah, we could talk all day.
Right.
Or something funny goes on. So I've been thinking you guys need to find. So you know how Joe Rogan does? Have you ever seen he does those fight companions?
No.
Okay, so if he's not doing like a UFC, if he's not like doing commentary, he'll get all of his comedian buddies in the room and they'll turn it on pay-per-view, and they call them fight companions. But they're supposed to be like commenting on the fights and what's actually happening. But what happens is they wind up off on these tangents and they go down every rabbit hole imaginable instead of watching the fight. And it's great. Just go. Oh my God, it's so good. Especially like, you know, his nut ass buddy, Eddie Bravo, the jiu-jitsu guy. Yeah. So, you know, he's into every conspiracy theory out there. Well, they get him drunk and then get him going. And it's just a freight train of the earth's flat and Hillary Clinton's trying to murder everybody. And
do you think we should do something like that?
Yes. You got to figure out what the right thing is going to be. So it works for them because you've got like fighters in the room, because he'll have Brendan Schaub and, you know, maybe somebody else will come. And so it's what it does is it triggers weird conversations that you can't plan. So like you got to turn on a football game or something because so-and-so, you know, some announcer is going to say something that's going to trigger. So, and you guys are just going to go down the rabbit hole and it'll be good. And you can get Trent in there with you or something. And where you guys just wind up just twisting off I think it would be cool.
And you can join us.
Yeah, I'll do it for sure. It'll be like 4 a.m. So like whenever there's big fights on, I get up at like 3:30 to watch them.
You do?
Yeah. I'll go to bed early, or I'll kind of like nap through them, you know, like the Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury fight. I woke up right before it ended. Like I fell asleep in the second round, sitting up straight and opened my eyes as Wilder got laid out. So
Wow, I can't believe anybody could fall asleep during that fight. That was an excellent fight.
I was tired, man, but I was able to go back and watch it again. But yeah.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, I can fall asleep during anything.
Yeah.
Well, Brian and Jen came over and watched it with us, and she typically falls asleep.
Yeah.
Usually falls asleep during every single fight, or during the night while we're watching like UFC or whatever. She'll fall asleep, and it's a joke amongst us all, because we're like, "Oh, is Jen asleep yet?" She's over there laying down. She was over there laying down. I'm like, "Jen, you asleep?" "No, I'm good." Or I'm like, okay. And I know 2 minutes later she could be asleep.
She's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. But
we always watched them at her house, and she would just disappear. Like, Brian, is Jen okay? Oh yeah, dude, she went to bed like an hour and a half ago.
she don't want anybody to hear her snore, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but there's been a lot of times she just falls asleep where she's at. Brian was telling a story, that night, the other night when we were watching the fights. He said, "Yeah, her and I watched some comedy movie or comedy show or whatever," and he said, "You want to watch a movie or whatever?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm good," And he's like, "Okay," and he goes, right when I hit play, I looked over at her and she was asleep. From what how the story went, but he was like, "Okay," and turned it off. She woke up. She's like, "No, I'm good." And he's like, "No, we'll just." I already know I'm watching this alone. So anyways. All right. Well, let's wrap this up. Wrap it up, yo.
Okay, so we're good.
We're good.
All right. Thank you again, Scott. Appreciate it. It was awesome.
Yeah.
This was a good one.
Yeah, appreciate it.
This is a good one, I promise you.
Yes, live from Germany.
All right. Have a great day.
I Don't Drink Coffee podcast.
What is
You
this?
said have a great day. You didn't say have yourself a great day.
Oh, have yourself a great day.
We are the I Don't Drink Coffee podcast. Love your body.